The US is seeing record numbers of job openings, but filling those positions is proving slow going. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
There were a total of 373,000 initial jobless claims last week, compared to the 350,000 some analysts expected. This figure is slightly higher than the number posted the week previous, and is an indication that the labour market could face some challenges in the months ahead. The US economy added a robust 850,000 jobs in June, but the unemployment rate ticked up a fraction to 5.9%. There were more than 9 million job openings in May, but a slew of pandemic-related factors persist as barriers to employment.
The Tokyo Olympics will be held without spectators in the stadiums after a state of emergency was declared in Japan's capital. Coronavirus case numbers in the country are climbing once again, with just over 2 weeks to go until the opening ceremony. FSN's correspondent Phoebe Amoroso is in Tokyo.
We heard from Japan's Olympic minister saying that in the name of safety, they would put this cap on spectators. IOC Thomas Bach as well saying that it's a responsibility to the Japanese people. It's important also to note that many people here have still yet to be vaccinated. Only around 15% of the population have been fully inoculated. Japan's vaccination program was very slow to roll out. It's really picked up speed, so much that demand has outstripped supply, and there have been a few cancellations. It's slowed down a bit. Prime Minister Suga is saying that, OK, yes, this is the fourth state of emergency that Tokyo is facing, and vaccines are the way out of this loop. He expects that 40% of the population will be vaccinated by August the 22nd, when the state of emergency is set to expire. But that is, of course, after the Olympic Games.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. It has been 16 years since a series of 4 coordinated suicide attacks in London targeted commuters on the city's public transport system. 56 people, including the 4 bombers, died on July the 7th, 2011. 3 bombs were detonated on the Underground and 1 on a bus by Islamist terrorists who perpetrated the worst terror attack ever on British soil. Sajda Mughal was one commuter who survived.
I was on the Piccadilly Tube. In fact, if I'd sat on the usual first carriage that I did every single day, it might have been a very different story because the bomber was on the first carriage. However, that day I was running late, so I didn't rush to the front to sit on the first carriage. I boarded more to the middle, near to the end, but getting onto that tube and unfortunately having to experience what I did that day. And that 1 hour down there, and I've said this continuously, felt literally like a lifetime. And it's only when I heard the emergency services and that one, and I will forever remember that voice, one male voice coming through the carriages saying, "It's police, we're coming to get you."
The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, marked the 16th anniversary yesterday, laying a wreath and observing a moment of silence at the 7/7 Memorial in London's Hyde Park. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. US President Joe Biden has confirmed the US withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. Weekly jobless claims in the United States grew unexpectedly last week, despite record job openings. And the Tokyo Olympics will go ahead without spectators, with the opening ceremony in just over 2 weeks' time. There's more from us on Twitter @FeatureStory, and that's the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone reporting.
This week, badly shaken researchers reported observing an osprey stalking, killing, and devouring an adult male lion in what is being called a massive food chain shakeup. Confirmation of the 3-pound marine bird consuming the 400-pound feline has biologists scrambling to determine the new predator-prey connections between the planet's billions of organisms.
We seem to be experiencing some sort of cross-species dietary free-for-all.
Scientists say that the killing of the healthy, full-grown lion by a typical osprey specimen has lent credibility to recent reports of a deer seen grazing on a nest of squirrels in Wisconsin, as well as a claim made by a group of Japanese fishermen who say they witnessed 300 million krill devouring a 40-ton humpback whale. In other news, NASA acquires the moon for an upcoming Kennedy Space Center exhibit. A radio DJ invites the whole town to some bullshit, and assuming the many universes theory of quantum mechanics is accurate, the review you've just seen will remain relevant in another reality for all eternity. For more, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program. The phones are open. If you want to join us here, as always, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the news today, Joe Biden is defending something that I think he actually should do for the first time, I think, in his presidency, which is to withdraw the troops from Afghanistan. So it's the correct choice. Of course, Donald Trump actually did some of that during his term. So this is, I guess, something the two of them apparently agree on. And Matt, you've got a Taliban response or Taliban comment to some extent on that. So we can talk about all that. By the way, with you tonight, it's Ian and also
Matt
and special guest host Etienne. Hey, Etienne.
De La Boetie Squared, author of Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed at government-scam.com.
Welcome back, and we're going to talk about the book, of course, which you've told me off the air has become a real good seller.
Yeah, from all over the world, 20-plus countries, thousands of copies in the past 3 months.
Way to go. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's rocking it.
I remember, I think it was, what was it, like 2017 when we met down in Acapulco, I think at the Anarchapulco event. You were just releasing the book back then.
I think it was 2018, and that was a kind of I'm a rapid prototyper, and so I think you got to see one of the rapid prototypes. Yeah, we're in a 4th edition now.
So we'll talk about all that stuff coming up here tonight. And the phones, as I say, they're open, 603-283-6160. Plus, here's a surprising headline. COVID distancing may have weakened children's immune system. That's a shocker,
don't say.
Yeah, so that's what some people are saying, some experts. But first, here from NPR, as security conditions deteriorate in Afghanistan, President Biden is defending his decision to pull U.S. troops out of America's longest-running war. He announced the decision in April and insisted today that he will stick to it, even as the consequences of that withdrawal become more and more stark. Quote, the question is, how much of a threat to the United States of America and to our allies is whatever results, Biden asked. Let me ask those who want us to stay. How many more? How many thousands more American daughters and sons are you willing to risk? How long would you have them stay? Now, it's interesting that it seems like the media is trying to give him a hard time over this, given how lapdog the media has been towards the Biden administration.
I'm really surprised to hear you say that. That's true.
Far.
They're being adversarial against him for that,
just as they would have done with Trump. So it's interesting that you've got the media is warmongering and saber rattling here, and you've got the two most recent presidents saying, it's time this thing should end. It's been 20 years now at this point.
I can't believe it's been 20 years. Yeah. I bet I could believe it if I lived in Afghanistan as an Afghani.
Can't even imagine what that must be like.
Could you imagine being a 20-year-old and never knowing a life without war?
Or without foreign troops?
Without foreign troops.
In your streets, randomly bombing and shooting people that you know and care about?
Unbelievable.
I was talking to a ex-Special Forces guy the other day, and he called it a giant U.S. heroin farm.
Oh,
that's basically what it is, isn't it?
It's a giant U.S. heroin
Silver
farm.
Dave?
This was Silver Dave. Absolutely.
He would know. I mean, that's a guy who was there. He saw it all firsthand. I mean, we've heard those stories before, but every once in a while, you know a person in real life that saw it.
Yep. And it's got pictures of himself between the poppies.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he talked about that. We had him on as a, I guess, short-time co-host. He kind of came and went, but he's great talent, great guy.
Yeah. Totally. And every once in a while, you get to, we used to have a crack epidemic in the United States. We had a bad crack epidemic, and then 9/11 happened, and then Afghanistan happened, and next thing you know, heroin's huge. There's heroin all over Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and I would imagine other places too.
And so I think it's interesting that the U.S. has troops not just in Afghanistan but in Colombia through Plan Colombia, where they've got the DEA and kind of force, and they're controlling essentially the two areas where the relatively rare poppy is able to be cultivated, as if they were controlling the business.
The CIA has long been alleged to be involved in drug trafficking internationally, right?
Oh, yeah. Alleged. They've had planes full of cocaine crash in the Yucatan Peninsula. And
I think one hit the ground in Arkansas, like right outside of Bill Clinton's hometown or something. Like there was a small airstrip. They're trying to put one down. They ran out of gas. Like they misjudged their gas needs on the way back and tried to cram more coke onto the plane instead. And next thing you know, it hits the ground like a half a mile before the runway.
There's just massive evidence of government drug dealing. I mean, anytime you give the government a get-out-of-jail-free card, the ability to just flash a badge and say national security, and you give them the ability, high-performance aircraft, bases, like it's a license to steal.
They're not getting searched by the Border Patrol, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're just moving it in.
You got it.
Yeah, so Biden, he's right about this one. It's high time that the Afghanistan conflict end. Now, that's not to say that he won't just get them right into a new war tomorrow, so the next day, as soon as they come back, start some new war in the Middle East somewhere else.
Well, they said they were going to get out of Iraq, and they left enough security contractors, so it's okay. We've pacified most of the active resistance to the point of where it can be handled by, security contractors. We pull out the people wearing, U.S. Army, uniforms. We say that we've had a drawdown, but we've had a drawdown that we're going to manage with private contractors,
right?
With mercenaries.
And then it's technically not the military,
right?
Yes, exactly.
And from what I understand, it was always the contractors that were doing all that, like most of the heavy lifting.
Is that right?
Yeah. Like the Marines or the Army would go in and do like a crash course on how to be a good citizen, and then next, when I say that, I mean they went in and killed a bunch of people, and then basically pulled back to bases, and contractors have basically been running the show ever since. And any little skirmishes that pop up, contractors are the ones that handle those.
It's a private mercenary army.
Yeah, basically,
keep them skilled.
And who knows what, is actually going to be the case after the fact in Afghanistan as well. We don't have those details yet. But for now, they're talking about pulling out, and the remarks from Biden were made from the East Room of the White House. They came a week after U.S. forces suddenly withdrew from Bagram Airfield, a move that Afghan allies framed as a surprise. It carried heavy symbolic overtones as looters swarmed what for years was the center of American military operations in the country. So they're already gone from there. The Taliban have also methodically swept up more and more territory and now threaten to topple the Afghan government. Wasn't the Taliban the reason, ostensibly, that the U.S. government went in the first place 20 years ago?
Yep.
So this was completely fruitless.
Totally wasted time.
Yeah.
And we just armed them, very similar to how we armed Al-Qaeda.
Well, I didn't do it. I wasn't involved.
Right. Well, the U.S. government.
I said it's a waste of time. It's really only a waste of time for us.
Right, but for the military-industrial complex.
For the military-industrial complex, it was a huge boon, and who knows what else they're gaining from it. There could be a big conspiracy plan in place that was necessary. It's no longer necessary now, so they just shut it off.
Despite his decades of experience on the topic, foreign policy is a potential vulnerability for the president. According to, again, this is NPR, a poll that they ran with the PBS NewsHour found Americans were split on his handling of foreign policy. It rated below his handling of the coronavirus and the economy. Of the four issues tested, only immigration was a greater problem area, according to this. He acknowledged the grim reality that a U.S. withdrawal could lead to, but made the blunt argument that maintaining the status quo is no longer worth the time, cost, and most importantly, risk to American troops that would be needed to hold things together in Afghanistan. I can't disagree with him on that one. Biden's long been a skeptic of an expanded U.S. mission in Afghanistan. On Thursday, he noted, as he often does, that as vice president during the Obama administration, he argued for a minimalist military footprint focused on thwarting terrorism. Then President Barack Obama instead opted to expand the number of troops on the ground.
That could also just be a game of good cop, bad cop.
Well, regardless, I mean, if it results in people getting out of Afghanistan and actually coming back to America, then that's a good thing.
Okay.
Right?
As long as they don't become cops.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to result in the military getting smaller or anything like that. But at the very least, they won't be making new terrorists because, the longer those troops are there, the more people that they're killing, the more buildings they're blowing up with human beings in them, the more angry relatives and sons and daughters they're turning into the next generation of terrorists.
Now, will they do it here?
Will they blow up buildings here? Yeah.
Sure, why not?
We'll continue here because they're definitely expanding the crackdown on so-called domestic terror. So maybe these troops, maybe his plan is to use these troops in the streets in the United States.
And they'll do it.
Wouldn't be a surprise. You can share your thoughts with us here. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com. Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to AgristHosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's AgristHosting.com.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Yep, it's Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. All you got to do, dial in at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, you've got me, Ian.
Etienne de la Boetie squared.
And Matt.
And we're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts. A little bit more about the U.S. pulling out of Afghanistan. Are they pulling out just to have more troops to be used to occupy the streets in the United States? Is that a possibility? Is that the side of the story that's not being told here? Because I'm in favor of withdrawing from Afghanistan. So from that perspective, if that's all this was, then great. But is there more to the story? one of the Taliban has something to say. And Matt, you've been checking into that. We're going to get into that story. But to your phone calls and thoughts first, he's Dave Ridley from RidleyReport.com. Dave, I heard you were back at the Porcupine Freedom Festival for the first time in several years this year. How was it?
It was all right. It was certainly big. It's not really my thing. I always have had this philosophy that we spend too much time socializing with each other and not enough time engaging the enemy in a political combat. But
well, that's a different event, though. That's not your typical social event that happens regularly around New Hampshire. And I do agree with you on your critique of the activism movement up here, but it is important to host an event like that to attract people from outside of New Hampshire to show them what life could be like if they actually had enough people around. So I was glad to hear that you went out there. I imagine you got some new footage, and you'll be posting that over at RidleyReport.com.
No, I tried not to get much video.
Oh, wow.
No one sees my videos anymore, so I do other things, and I was wearing my Gandhi outfit every other day.
Oh, right on. So Bitcoin Gandhi was on the scene. Very cool. I love it. So, but that wasn't the reason you were calling in here tonight. What did you want to share with us?
So a reminder of the level of success that we are having in New Hampshire as libertarians. Have you heard about these comments that were made by the New Hampshire governor that were kind of secretly taped?
I think so. Where he was basically saying libertarians don't belong in the Republican Party?
Something like that. I'm queuing up the exact quote here. I have it written down. Oh, yes. Okay. Quote, "At the end of the day, it has to be about the Republican Party. It can't be about a libertarian wing coming in. The libertarians are not Republicans. They have their own party," unquote.
Yeah, he's not happy, from what I understand, about the libertarians who've basically been slowly taking over the Republican Party from the inside here in New Hampshire, several of whom, actually 20, I think, plus 24 or more than that maybe at this point, of whom have actually gotten elected. Like straight up anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist type people.
More Republican than your average Republican.
Those guys. That's what he's upset about, right, Dave?
Yes, I guess. And there's also, there was a radio talk show host in eastern New Hampshire recently who made the claim that, let's say I wrote this down too, quote, "The Free Staters and the Libertarians probably control about 100 legislators," unquote.
I'd say that's optimistic, but if we were actually looking at the numbers, I don't know, last week or something like that, we were talking about the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, which is, I think, a Free Stater founded organization. I think it was founded with natives, though, as well. Freedom-minded people are running this group, and they do a report card every year with all 400 state reps on it and the 24 state senators, and they look at their voting records and they say, all right, well, how does this person vote on this bill, this bill, this bill, and they give them a grade based on whether they voted pro-freedom or not. And if you look at the A plus, and A minus numbers of people who got those scores, it was like close to 100, if not just over 100. If you include the B minuses, it was definitely, the B pluses, it was definitely over 100. Now, these aren't perfect libertarians, so I wouldn't say that they're controlled by the libertarians necessarily. But if you look at the A pluses, I think there was like 20 plus 30 maybe that were A plus, and that means they scored 97 to 100%. So they're there with us on every single issue, almost every single time. So that's a good cadre of people that's going to be, in just the case of 30 votes, that's going to be enough to swing any vote on pretty much any bill that's controversial, right? Because if it's a tied kind of, split house bill, you want to get the libertarians on your side or else you're going to lose, whatever way that goes.
Yeah, this was a hostile radio show which was making these claims. They were doing an expose show on the Free Staters. The host also said that, quote, "They're literally getting rid of taxes or slashing taxes. Then they're increasing the capacity of vouchers for private and parochial schools that anybody can basically use."
How dare they?
The horror.
Oh, yeah. The people on the left are livid about this recent budget that passed in New Hampshire that, again, there's no doubt the libertarians had a major hand in. Jason Osborne is the Republican House leader For those that don't know who that is, he's a longtime former sponsor of Free Talk Live. Like before he even moved here, he's a pure voluntarist, pure anarcho-capitalist guy. Somehow has managed to play the political game to the extent where he's now the number 2 guy of all the Republicans in the state house. He was instrumental in making this happen. And as a result, the state government in New Hampshire is cutting its budget by, I think, 3.3%. They're knocking $100 million off of property taxes. They're actually reducing the meals and rooms tax by only 0.5%, but it is being reduced. And I think they're like phasing out some other tax. I forget what that is. I forget which one it is, but they're cutting things for once.
It's fantastic.
And so, it's not like they've completely eviscerated the entire state or anything like that, but a 3.3% cut is probably more than almost any other state. In fact, I've asked this question before, and no one has yet answered it. Of the other 49 states, how many of them are cutting budgets?
I really doubt any of them
That's what I want to know. I want to know, is there another one? There might be, Idaho or something like that. Is there another state that's cutting their budget 2021?
I don't know. I know that I was just looking at the Cato Economic Freedom Index, and New Hampshire was 2 after Florida was 1.
What year? Do you recall what year it was?
I don't. It was on the website, so I'm assuming it was the current year. But
they usually trail back. So the current report is usually looking at numbers from 2 years back, typically.
Right.
So maybe it's 2018, 2019. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in 2022 or 2023 when it's the 2020 numbers, because New Hampshire's
cutting the budget versus I don't think Florida is, because I think Florida's
there's no way in hell Florida's going to cut the budget.
Right.
Yeah. It's a massive state.
Yeah.
Dave, anything else you want to share about the people freaking out over these cuts and the libertarians and the successes that we've been having here?
Well, there was an occasion in the 2011 budget, they cut that by 11%, and that was also blamed on free staters. And so it's just kind of a revisitation of that. But yeah, again, when was the last time your state, wherever you are, had this sort of quote unquote problem with libertarians? This is probably the only place where they count enough to be attacked so much and to actually see a budget going down.
Absolutely true. Dave, thanks for the great reporting out there. RidleyReport.com. Check him out. Appreciate it. Thanks for the call.
Say what you want about the Free State Project. It's working. The Liberty Migration is working.
There's no doubt about it. And it's only at, 10%?
Yeah.
Of the, we had 20,000 people sign up for the Free State Project.
I think we're over 3,000 now. But
is it over
3? We're getting better. But we're doing
15%.
Yeah. So it's basically nothing. If you guys move here, if you like liberty and you want to do anything about it, move to New Hampshire.
If you're sick of losing,
move to New Hampshire.
And liberty's hot everywhere. All these liberty events are blowing up.
We continue. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. US President Joe Biden has confirmed the US withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. He said America had succeeded in its mission and rejected the possibility of the Taliban retaking control of the country. FSN's correspondent Nick Harper reports from Washington.
President Joe Biden had already set September the 11th as the date by which all US troops would be out of the country. Now he says it'll be done by August the 31st. When asked by reporters, though, he rejected the idea that the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan was now inevitable.
The Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force, against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
But with the militant group continuing to make advances and with more than 1,000 Afghan troops recently fleeing the country, there are concerns for the future of Afghanistan once the US troops leave. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
The number of Americans filing for first-time unemployment benefits rose unexpectedly last week. The US is seeing record numbers of job openings, but filling those positions is proving slow going. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
There were a total of 373,000 initial jobless claims last week, compared to the 350,000 some analysts expected. This figure is slightly higher than the number posted the week previous, and is an indication that the labour market could face some challenges in the months ahead. The US economy added a robust 850,000 jobs in June, but the unemployment rate ticked up a fraction to 5.9%. There were more than 9 million job openings in May, but a slew of pandemic-related factors persist as barriers to employment.
The Tokyo Olympics will be held without spectators in the stadiums after a state of emergency was declared in Japan's capital. Coronavirus case numbers in the country are climbing once again, with just over 2 weeks to go until the opening ceremony. FSN's correspondent Phoebe Amoroso is in Tokyo.
We heard from Japan's Olympic minister saying that in the name of safety, they would put this cap on spectators. IOC Thomas Bach as well saying that it's a responsibility to the Japanese people. It's important also to note that many people here have still yet to be vaccinated. Only around 15% of the population have been fully inoculated. Japan's vaccination program was very slow to roll out. It's really picked up speed, so much that demand has outstripped supply, and there have been a few cancellations. It's slowed down a bit. Prime Minister Suga is saying that, okay, yes, this is the fourth state of emergency that Tokyo is facing, and vaccines are the way out of this loop. He expects that 40% of the population will be vaccinated by August the 22nd, when the state of emergency is set to expire. But that is, of course, after the Olympic Games.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and the number if you want to join us here, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You know, it took a while, and it was a slow migration over a period of more than 15 years now. But the Free State Project, I agree with you, Matt, it absolutely has been a success. We have thousands of people who have migrated here. Nowhere near as many as promised.
Nope.
But there's still
needed them.
Yeah, there's still more that are coming on board. There's still new people that are just discovering this migration for the first time this year. In fact, Etienne de la Boetie Squared is with us from government-scam.com, the author of Government, the biggest scam in history exposed. You've been at a bunch of different Liberty events this year and last year and previously, but you're seeing an uptick, like a significant.
Oh, absolutely. So
it wasn't just Pork Fest.
No. So I go to all the major Liberty events. We're generally exhibitors, sometimes frequently a speaker. And I was giving you some examples, but Jackalope Freedom Festival 2 years ago in Arizona was 200 people. Last year it was 600 plus. This year I think it's going to be 1,000.
Wow.
That's jackalopefreedomfestival.com. What do we think? Like last year, there was around 1,000 or so at the Porcupine Freedom at Pork Fest.
More than doubled this year.
More than doubled, 2,500, and it sold out
for the first time ever.
For the first time ever, at least a month before the event. And I had people emailing me saying, "Hey, how can I get tickets? Do you know where I can, buy tickets from somebody who doesn't want them or whatever?" I think it could have been 3,000 if they hadn't cut it off a month beforehand. We just came from the Red Pill Expo. That was 700 people in South Dakota, the biggest Red Pill Expo ever. Liberty is hot.
Red Pill is the G. Edward Griffin.
Author of The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Right. He's like in his 80s, isn't he?
He's like his 80s, and he's still going strong. He's a gangsta.
He's peppy.
Yeah, absolutely. But we talked about Float Fest, first year event, 200 to 300 maybe plus, hard to tell because it was, different people on different days and everything. But like all of these Liberty events are blowing up. I think Liberty is hot.
Is it because of the COVID crackdown? Is that why?
I think that's part of it. But also I think that it's that, you're seeing the what I like to call the developing voices of developing authentic voices of the alternative media are starting to, kind of get the word out about liberty, about the liberty alternative, about voluntarism, anarcho-capitalism. We don't need government. And also the scam of government. And so, my book has taken off the past 3 months. Government, the biggest scam in history exposed. Essentially, it's the subtitle is "It's the government and media working together: How intergenerational organized crime runs the government and the media." And the big scam is that government is always illegitimate. You can never have a legitimate government. If I don't have the right to take your money or make up rules for you, I can't delegate a right I don't have myself.
And you can't vote yourself a right with other people.
You can't vote yourself a right. And if democracy doesn't work with me and Matt voting for you to give us all your money, it doesn't matter if there's 4 of us or 250 million. Nothing is going to take something that's inherently immoral and make it moral just because the majority wants to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, and let me slow you down on that. I think most people would agree when it came to looking at a small number of people, like it would obviously be unfair and wrong for the two of you guys to gang up on me and take, anything that happens to be mine. But then they lose that understanding when it gets writ to 300 million people and this voting system. It somehow successfully obscures the violence. It obscures what's really going on.
It obscures it because they sell it to the population in the mandatory government schools. So it's in fact, I'm about to rename the book for the 5th edition, and I'm going to call it "How Intergenerational Organized Crime Runs the Government and the Media / Academia." Because it really is, we're paying off the academia, whether it's the mandatory government schools or it's the state colleges, et cetera, and we're having them tell the population that government is legitimate without ever, generally before they're old enough to evaluate the logic or the morality of the statement. We're sliding it to them as a religion in these mandatory government schools where it's a church school where the teacher is the priest and they have you do the common prayer of the Pledge of Allegiance. They have you sing hymns, of the national anthem. They take you to
indoctrination chants.
They take you to Mecca, Washington, D.C., and kind of middle school.
Or the State House.
Where they take you into the Capitol, which looks like the Vatican for a reason. They take you into the temples. They show you the deities. And it gets you to tithe a portion of your income. And then they have classic shave-headed cult members, which is the military and the police, who they put through a completely kind of separate, unethically manipulative program where now we're going to put you into the uniform, the single form conformity. We're going to shave your head. We're going to segment you away from the rest of society into camps and military bases.
It's a crazy religious death cult. And
absolutely. But it only until you realize how the scam works. And so, what I do in the book is, I'm exposing to people how the scam works. And once you understand how the magician does the trick, you don't get fooled by the trick anymore. And I think that is a revolution that's only going in one direction. Because once you realize how they do the trick, once you realize the scam of the whole thing, the illegitimacy of the whole thing, very few people go back to, wearing a uniform and identifying themselves as a sucker for a system that is, unethically manipulating them by controlling the information either through the schools or through the media.
Well, you know what, Etienne, this is going to require more work on your part, though, because it's going to be more than just this awesome book. We're going to need a piggyback. You've discussed the problem in the book.
Yes.
Now we need a solution.
That's funny you say that. You nailed it. So the biggest criticism I get of the book is I get people saying, you've done a great job of explaining how organized crime runs the government and the media, but it just doesn't matter because if it wasn't for government, who's going to build the roads? And so I'm actually in the middle of, and I'm about to pick back up. I dropped it for when the COVID came to try and organize resistance for the COVID, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But my next book will be entitled Voluntarism. And the working title was going to be How the Only Ism Fair for Everyone Leads to Harmony and Prosperity for All. And if you think about it, all the isms, whether it's communism, socialism, democratic, republicanism, whatever, all of them have a ruling class.
Yeah, somebody's getting taken advantage of.
Somebody's getting taken advantage of, and there's this ruling class, whether it's the divine right of kings or whether it's rigged elections or whatever, but because of this because of the system, this ruling class gets to make up rules for everybody and steal the wealth of others. And so voluntarism is really the idea that all human relations should be voluntary. Nobody gets to use violence or coercion or extortion on anybody else. Nobody has rights that other people don't have. And it's a recognition that the world is a self-organizing system. It produces spontaneous order. And every single thing the government does, whether it is roads or schools or, air traffic control, which has been privatized in Canada, all of these things would be better done faster, cheaper, more cost effectively by the free market, by mutual aid societies, by real charities, by nonprofit organizations. All of this stuff could be done. We do not need government. It has been the biggest scam in history. It really is.
And it's time for it to end.
And it's time for it to end.
But it should be ended in a peaceful manner. Don't you agree?
Yeah. We have to have what I advocate is a peaceful and orderly dissolution of the U.S. Federal government, revolving it back to the states, and then the states revolving it back to localities. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm trying to fund a voluntarist think tank, get a think tank started to where we can begin developing solutions and begin to say, at the town level, how do we privatize essential services? How do we roll it back? I don't see anybody doing that work. There's a lot of think tanks in Washington, D.C., but most of them are all statist. Mm-hmm. And so there really needs to be a voluntarist think tank where from the outset we're saying, hey, government is illegitimate. Not just the government is illegitimate on its face for all the reasons we just named, but also really focused on the criminality of the government and the media and academia, so that this has been, that there's, not just like boss hog corruption, but we're talking about trillions of dollars stolen, handed to private banks, private companies through these bailouts and stimulus and military industrial complex fraud. I mean, we're getting robbed.
Meanwhile, there's still these state cultists that fully believe in this concept, and they will use violence to enforce their viewpoint. Somebody who we've interviewed with you, David Rodriguez, is in some hot water right now in California. Let's talk about what's happening to him and how that all ties in here. Coming up on Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
On March 16th this year, government task forces violently raided the New Hampshire Bitcoin Embassy, the Mighty Moose Mart, the homes of Aria DiMezzo, Andy and Renee Spinella, Colleen Fordham, a grandmother, and perhaps most relevant, the studios of Free Talk Live. The Crypto Six were arrested. 4 were released on bail conditions, but Ian Freeman was held hostage for 69 days. Rich Paul, also known as Nobody, remains captive. We've consulted attorneys who say no crime even appears to have been committed. But that didn't stop the Joint Thug Task Force from ripping out wires from our broadcast stacks, taking Free Talk Live off the air, resulting in a violation of our and your First Amendment rights. You can visit thecrypto6.com to help, but as importantly, contact other media and tell them about this outrage. This case is likely to set precedent for cryptocurrency use well into your future. Help our fight for liberty and financial freedom at thecrypto6.com.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, we're here. We'll take your calls. Your thoughts are welcome. 603-283-6160. We're here with Etienne de la Boetie Squared. He is the author of Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, which you can order for yourself over at government-scam.com. It's a great coffee table, conversation starter kind of book, in my opinion.
Yeah, and not only on your coffee table, but I got a lot of people that are putting them. They're either running Airbnbs and they put them out.
That's great.
They put them out on their Airbnb, and then they call and give me stories about the retired police officer that picked it up, or interesting like stories like that. And then we have some friends bundles, and in the past 3 months we've had over around 90 different people that have bought and given away 600 plus copies in just friends bundles. So people are giving around in 5s and 10s, and then we have a donor to the Art of Liberty Foundation that makes it cost effective for us to cut the price to the bone. So it's very inexpensive if you're buying a friends bundle to give away to friends.
That's cool.
So
what's the minimum purchase on a friends bundle?
5 for $60 or 10 for $99.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad at all. All right, so check that out. And I wanted to get into what was going on. You told us during one of the breaks about David Rodriguez, and he is somebody who I believe we interviewed last year at the Porcupine Freedom Festival or Fork Fest. I know you guys were there for some of that, and then he headed home after that. And did he make it back out this year, or was he in trouble before that happened?
I don't know when all the trouble required. I knew he was supposed to be in court, so that's probably why he didn't make it to Pork Fest. But what happened is, so the long and short of it, David Rodriguez is a liberty activist. He's a doer. He's a doer, absolutely. He runs the Gatto Project, where he is republishing John Taylor Gatto's books.
Genius.
He's the New York Teacher of the Year or something.
I think twice.
Yeah, and
the New York State Teacher of the Year. The city. He was both the city. No, he won both the city and the state.
Ah, okay.
And then he resigned on the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal, saying he would no longer harm children. And then he went on to write a number of different books. Weapons of mass instruction.
He completely outed the government school Prussian system. All of the negative brainwashing techniques, all just the horrible stuff that people don't really realize is being utilized there. But
and it was a big problem for them too to have. I wonder how much damage control that public school system did in New York to try to kind of silence I wonder what kind of power they have behind them to silence somebody like him, because he was a big shot in their circles. He won New York State Teacher of the Year twice.
What do you say to somebody like that?
And now he's coming out and saying, don't come here.
Yeah.
I will no longer harm children.
I will no longer harm. Don't send your kids to the schools.
And he made it, I believe, till his 80s, and then he passed away a few years back, or several years ago at this point.
A couple years ago. And
so David's picked up the torch, so to speak?
David's picked up the torch. He republished an underground history of American education, which had gone out of print. And he also runs something called Valor Academy, where he accelerates graduations for students that want to get out of the government school system early, and then helps arrange apprenticeships so they're not wasting their time in an indoctrination camp and they can be learning real skills. But what really got him thrown into the so right now he's in jail without bail.
In California.
In Santa Cruz, California. And to give you some background, and I actually play a little part in the story, but when the COVID hit, I'd gone to California to meet with some of the donors to the Art of Liberty Foundation that are in California. And David and I were going into hospitals at the time, exposing empty tents, empty waiting rooms, and hospital employees openly speculating that the whole thing was a hoax.
Mm-hmm.
And we went into Santa Clara Hospital, which the LA Times called the epicenter of COVID in California. And I went all the way through the testing process. There's nobody there. There's nobody getting tested. There's nobody. The tents are empty. There's a bunch of hospital employees dressed up in moon suits, off of right out of some kind of science fiction movie. Outbreak. Yeah. It was just absolutely ridiculous. All standing around looking bored out of their minds. And I go through the testing procedure, and I get to the guy doing the testing. I take off my mask. I'm an investigative journalist. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And the guy looks like he looks worried, like he's doing something he should not be doing. But he was honest with me. And I said, are you guys testing a lot of people? He's like, no, they'd only tested 10 people the day before. And that was like a Saturday, which should have been like, the one day people were off of work and could go and actually get tested. And I said, are you guys seeing any, is there a pandemic? He said, no, they're not experiencing anything that we called pandemic conditions. I said, are you seeing any more death or disease than the usual and customary elderly deaths and seasonal influenzas and things that normally kill people in hospital? And he said no.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's a lot of those people. There's a lot of those people in the health profession looking around at each other like, is this even?
Well, we talked, and there was a paramedic that was openly speculating the whole thing was a hoax. And then like a week or two later, we went into Dominican Hospital. We found the exact same things, tents flapping in the wind. You remember when they had the tents, because we're just going to have an overflow of people any second now. And so there's tents flapping in the winds.
This is in California.
This is in California, which if you think about it, in Silicon Valley, huge Chinese population, huge, flows of people in and out of China to that part of the country. So if you really were experiencing an epidemic that spread from China, that is the place where that would have been the epicenter.
Plus, it's also the place with some of the most obedient populace out there. They just love the government. Plenty of Californians, so
they love them some government. And so we were exposing that. And then we go to a meeting of about 10 people, kind of 30, 40, young 30, 40 somethings, maybe some 20 somethings, et cetera. And of 10 friends that just did not believe what the government and the media was telling them about the COVID. Mm-hmm. And we helped them begin, or we, filled in some pieces and everything. And we helped them begin organizing resistance. And we created what was one of the most effective resistance cells in the entire country. The first week we had 10 people. The next week we had 20. The week after that we had 37 marching through the streets of Santa Cruz, bullhorning. It's just the flu, people. It's just the flu. The week after that, we had almost 400 people in a Facebook group, and we began regularly turning out 60, 70 plus people at peaceful civil disobedience. They were closing down the beaches and the parks, and we'd have beach days, and we would all 60, 70 people would walk onto the beach at the same time. Like, we're reopening this beach, and we'd have a beach party, and there would be...
And they wouldn't do anything about it.
Well, no, the police would come out, and the police would say, "Hey, you can't be on. This is why why I believe David is in jail." And I'll get to the specifics of the charges, but in essence, the police would come out, they'd tell us to leave, and we would stand on our natural law rights, not the Constitution, natural law. You don't have the ability to close the beach. You don't own the beach. There was never a period of time where the government got ownership of the beach. You don't have the right to do this, and you're using violence on peaceful people, which makes you the criminal. And I was there for 2 months, and in 8 weeks, we did 8 different civil disobedience things, and we stood down the cops 8 weeks in a row.
Did you guys get video?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Got tons of video and everything.
Okay.
And so not only do we stand down the cops, but the city of Santa Cruz, the public health officer, rescinded the policy of closing the beaches and said in print in the newspaper, the people refuse to be governed in this manner. So the people that tell you can't beat City Hall, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, you can if you have enough people. Sure.
Absolutely. And so I think because David was, number one, making the police look impotent and making the government look impotent. Number one.
Well, that's what civil disobedience does. Yeah. It either makes them look impotent if they don't crack down, or if they crack down, it makes them look tyrannical. One or the other.
You got it. And he was making them look both. And also he was publicizing that we were publicizing that some of these bureaucrats are paying themselves $300,000 plus salaries. The sheriff is making $390,000.
Wow.
$380,000, $390,000. So they're getting robbed. And so we were exposing it from this voluntarist standpoint of that government is always illegitimate. It's a scam. So we're exposing this. One of the other things that David was exposing is you don't have to have a license, driver's license, and you don't have to have a license plate if you're not engaged in commercial activity. And so a lot of people don't realize that the Supreme Court has ruled that it's only a motor vehicle if you're engaged in
commerce.
Has anyone ever won in court on this? Because I've heard this theory for years.
I have.
Yeah, you personally have.
I have. I called into Free Talk Live a long time ago to talk about it before I lived here. But yeah, I won in my hometown. No driver's license. I didn't do the license plate, but I did the driver's license, and I won that.
I want to continue with this in a moment because now they're targeting David. So he did all this civil disobedience, was definitely a leader, if you will, in this movement. And so they always target the leaders. They always target the people that they consider to be the head of any kind of organization.
The masterminds.
Is 603-283-6160. We're talking civil disobedience and success stories here on Free Talk Live. But there is a price to pay. That's coming up.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. US President Joe Biden has confirmed the US withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. He said America had succeeded in its mission and rejected the possibility of the Taliban retaking control of the country. FSN's correspondent Nick Harper reports from Washington.
President Joe Biden had already set September the 11th as the date by which all US troops would be out of the country. Now he says it'll be done by August the 31st. When asked by reporters, though, he rejected the idea that the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan was now inevitable.
The Afghan troops have 300,000 well equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
But with the militant group continuing to make advances and with more than 1,000 Afghan troops recently fleeing the country, there are concerns for the future of Afghanistan once the US troops leave. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
The number of Americans filing for first-time unemployment benefits rose unexpectedly last week. The US is seeing record numbers of job openings, but filling those positions is proving slow going. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
There were a total of 373,000 initial jobless claims last week, compared to the 350,000 some analysts expected. This figure is slightly higher than the number posted the week previous, and is an indication that the labour market could face some challenges in the months ahead. The US economy added a robust 850,000 jobs in June, but the unemployment rate ticked up a fraction to 5.9%. There were more than 9 million job openings in May, but a slew of pandemic-related factors persist as barriers to employment.
The Tokyo Olympics will be held without spectators in the stadiums after a state of emergency was declared in Japan's capital. Coronavirus case numbers in the country are climbing once again, with just over 2 weeks to go until the opening ceremony. FSN's correspondent Phoebe Amoroso is in Tokyo.
We heard from Japan's Olympic minister saying that in the name of safety, they would put this cap on spectators. IOC Thomas Bach as well saying that it's a responsibility to the Japanese people. It's important also to note that many people here have still yet to be vaccinated. Only around 15% of the population have been fully inoculated. Japan's vaccination program was very slow to roll out. It's really picked up speed, so much that demand has outstripped supply, and there have been a few cancellations. It's slowed down a bit. Prime Minister Suga is saying that, OK, yes, this is the fourth state of emergency that Tokyo is facing, and vaccines are the way out of this loop. He expects that 40% of the population will be vaccinated by August the 22nd, when the state of emergency is set to expire. But that is, of course, after the Olympic Games.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. It has been 16 years since a series of 4 coordinated suicide attacks in London targeted commuters on the city's public transport system. 56 people, including the 4 bombers, died on July the 7th, 2011. 3 bombs were detonated on the Underground and 1 on a bus by Islamist terrorists who perpetrated the worst terror attack ever on British soil. Sajda Mughal was one commuter who survived.
I was on the Piccadilly Tube. In fact, if I'd sat on the usual first carriage that I did every single day, it might have been a very different story because the bomber was on the first carriage. However, that day I was running late, so I didn't rush to the front to sit on the first carriage. I boarded more to the middle, near to the end, but getting onto that tube and unfortunately having to experience what I did that day. And that 1 hour down there, and I've said this continuously, felt literally like a lifetime. And it's only when I heard the emergency services and that one, and I will forever remember that voice, one male voice coming through the carriages saying, "It's police, we're coming to get you."
The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, marked the 16th anniversary yesterday, laying a wreath and observing a moment of silence at the 7/7 Memorial in London's Hyde Park. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. US President Joe Biden has confirmed the US withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. Weekly jobless claims in the United States grew unexpectedly last week, despite record job openings. And the Tokyo Olympics will go ahead without spectators, with the opening ceremony in just over 2 weeks' time. There's more from us on Twitter @FeatureStory, and that's the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone reporting.
Here is the Onion Weekend Review Transportation Edition. In Albany, a Greyhound bus crash claimed 30 miserable lives Tuesday, finally putting over 24 deadbeat fathers, penniless drug addicts, and hapless bastards out of their misery. Emergency crews at the scene of the merciful accident described the sea of fast food bags, candy bar wrappers, and losing lottery tickets surrounding the crash site as utterly tragic, adding that the scorched corpses inside the bus were, quote, only slightly more lifeless than before the deadly accident.
Evidence suggests that most of the victims suffered during the crash, and for many years before they even boarded the bus. All I can say is, thank God no one made it.
Al-Qaeda is refusing to carry out any further terrorist attacks until the U.S. mass transportation infrastructure is drastically improved, calling the country's roads and bridges a, quote, travesty, unbecoming of a developed first world nation.
We want to turn your bridges into rubble. But if we took credit for making them collapse, no one would ever believe us.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour of the program. The number, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. Great place to go to learn about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. If you haven't taken the time to learn the basics, well, this is a good place to go. You can click Get Started right at the top of the page, and they've got some introductory videos there, one of which, I think the first one, it's like 3 minutes long. So you can spend 5 minutes and, you can get the basics about crypto. You may be enticed to watch more after that because it is a pretty fascinating topic and one of those things you can dig as deep into as you want. So get started over at Bitcoin.com. If you're not brand new, you can find some valuable stuff over on their news website. At news.bitcoin.com. They got the latest headlines in the world of cryptocurrency there at news.bitcoin.com. So check that out. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
Etienne de la Boetie, squared.
And Matt.
And Etienne is the author of Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed. You can go and check that out and order your copy over at government-scam.com. Etienne, you were telling us about David Rodriguez, who I believe we interviewed last year. We've interviewed him a couple times here and there over the years from Anarchapulco and elsewhere, but last year at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And I think you were telling us a little bit about some of the civil disobedience that was going on that you were helping him with out in California last year. And you had some amazing success stories like taking back the beaches, for instance, with several dozen people at once. And as you pointed out in the last hour, if you got enough people on your side, you can beat City Hall. You can definitely back them down. And we did the same thing here in Keene in 2009 with the 420s that were going on here, where 100 to 150 people were out in Central Square in downtown Keene, and the police had enough of it, so they came out and they arrested the two people they figured were in charge of the group, because that's how they operate. They figure everything's organized the way they are, which is to say one person in charge of an organization. And of course, with liberty groups, it's not always that way. There's very rarely one person who's in charge of a thing, but sometimes you can successfully identify an organizer, somebody who's promoting a thing or whatever. They, for whatever reason, have more attention drawn to them. And so the police zero in on those folks. In our case,
Kingpin.
In our case, I would say half the crowd, so like 50 plus people, after the arrest happened in Central Square, walked down to the police department, because Keene's small, you can walk to the police department pretty much anywhere, marched down to the police department and proceeded to smoke marijuana outside of the police department, sitting in a large circle in the no unauthorized access area behind the police department, essentially blocking the cruisers from being able to come in and leave, and just sat there and smoked weed while we waited for then Rich Paul, he's changed his name to nobody since then, to be released. The next day, we went back and the police showed up again and made another arrest. This time, the group went back to the police department, went inside the department, and proceeded to light up at least one joint, perhaps more, inside the police department lobby, right in front of the 3 glass windows, in full view of every bureaucrat in the department. And you know what they did? Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
And in fact, after that point, the police then changed their approach to what was going on because the 420s continued day after day after day for weeks and weeks in Central Square. After that, the official police line was, we've been receiving calls about what's going on in Central Square, and we've checked it out, and no marijuana is being smoked. And they were done.
Oh, my God.
They were done investigating that so-called crime after we smoked up in their police lobby.
Well, you know, what else I think is going on in New Hampshire is that more and more people are figuring out that the government is illegitimate.
Yeah, the locals.
The locals are figuring out the government is illegitimate. The government is using violence on peaceful people. And now the police are starting to be viewed as the bad guys. They're the people who have been kind of chumped into this system. They're wearing costumes. They've shaved their head. They're enforcing the dictates of an artificially indoctrinated statist religion on their neighbors. They're raising revenue on their neighbors. They're not looking so good.
It's getting harder for them to find new hires, too.
Yeah. I mean, like, you're robbing us. You're living off money stolen at the point of a gun.
Interestingly, I was talking with one of the he works at the college part-time, but he's a police chief in one of the towns in Cheshire County. So he's sort of got two different gigs. And he was telling me at one point that it's hard for them to even find new people who want to work in a small town police department, even though it's like, a pretty cush job compared to, say, like a city cop job where you actually might be dealing with an armed robber or something like that. This is small town stuff, right? Like somebody steals a cow or whatever, that kind of level of policing. They can't even find hirees for that kind of job.
Because you're a chump.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're willing to use violence on your friends and neighbors, and you're willing to put on a costume and shave your head, and like the population realizes, hey, that's the product of this unethically manipulative system, that's not legitimate. Like, who wants to be that guy?
Yeah, it's having an effect. I thought it was interesting that he admitted that to me just in a conversation we were having. So let's get back to David Rodriguez. He's currently inside a jail cell. You say he's facing something like 39 different charges. He was with you organizing some of the civil disobedience last year in Santa Cruz. But unlike you, he lives in the area, and so they were able to easily target him for retaliation. What happened? This was just recently, right, that they picked him up?
So they targeted him. They began targeting him for retaliation. Like while we were still doing the civil disobedience, I watched them steal his car one night, where his car was parked in a kind of unfortunately, it was like the city's lot. And so then, it was after hours or whatever, and they towed his car. I watched them steal his car, even though, just pure retaliation because we wouldn't comply with their, demands. And so he would not use the license plate because he doesn't have to. And that's not my civil disobedience, but I'm glad that people like that are doing that because a right not exercised is lost. And so he's standing up for everybody else's rights. And so they're targeting him because they don't want the population to know that you don't need a license and you don't need a license plate as long as you're not involved in commerce. And so they racked up charges against him. He went into court for it earlier this week. They cleared the courtroom. They arrested him. He's not been tried.
To see what they were going to do.
They're now saying that even though he's not been tried on any of these 39 charges, they're saying it now is escalated to a felony. So they're trying to put felonies on him.
Oh my God!
And they're putting him up for a psych evaluation. And somebody told me today that he could be facing as long as 3 years.
Well, if you don't obey the state, you must be crazy.
You must be crazy if you don't believe in gubernare mente, gubernare to govern and control mente the mind. If you don't believe that the government is legitimate, then you must be crazy.
It's scary stuff. So the 39 charges, and obviously you don't know what they all are, but can you kind of rattle a few off?
A lot of them are just failure to present a license to a police officer. Those were the ones that stood out the most for me. But there's no, they never have proven that he is somebody that's required to have a license. And so if he's not required to have a license, which is my understanding of the law, then these are all bogus charges. They're all victimless crimes. I mean, we're talking about somebody that has not hurt anybody.
Right.
That is now being charged with felonies, and all of this stuff is just the government and its victimless crimes.
The biggest crime is not obeying the state.
Yeah.
That's why people like Ross Ulbricht are in prison for 2 life sentences plus, 40 years, and a murderer gets off with 22 years. There's a huge discrepancy between people who actually harm others and what sentences they receive, and then the people whose only crime is not doing what they were told, is not being obedient. That's the real crime in America, and that's why they're coming at him full on. That's why they're coming at the Crypto Six. We didn't victimize anybody.
The majority of crimes that the government charges people with are victimless crimes where there is no victim. And so the government is essentially robbing and extorting the population for court costs, fines, and fees for things where not only is there no victim, but the judge works for the government, the prosecutor works for the government, and the witness, the police, all work for the government. So it doesn't even meet the government's own criteria to have a fair trial. I mean, these are kangaroo courts.
Sure are.
You will obey or you will pay.
Yeah, and you can point it out, but it doesn't make much of a difference. One thing that does make a difference is numbers and having people physically together in one geographic area, which is why I wish more people like David would come to New Hampshire and gather together. That way we have a whole crew of people driving with no license.
Absolutely.
And no license plate. Because it's always just one guy that gets picked off, and then, we'll continue.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
A congressman recently revealed that legislation totaling 2,900 pages and involving more than $1 trillion was available to members of Congress for less than 48 hours to study and consider. That's over 60 pages of legislation per hour. Do you think anyone read the entire bill? I'm Jim Babka with DownsizeDC.org. Consider a proposal buried in a 3,200-page, $388 billion bill, which would have empowered committee chairmen or their agents to examine Americans' tax returns. When this horrible provision came to light, no one claimed to know how it got into the bill. One congressman questioned said, "I didn't write it, I didn't approve it, I wasn't even consulted." If your attorney represented you this way, he might be disbarred. But this is how Congress represents you every day. That's why DownsizeDC.org has created the Read the Bills Act. You can force Congress to read their bills before they pass them at DownsizeDC.org.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You want to join in here? The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Comment on whatever you want to discuss. So we are talking about civil disobedience and going up against the status quo. There, unfortunately, is usually some sort of a price to pay because they will target you eventually if they get a hold of who you might be, and if you're possibly somebody they consider to be in charge or an influencer of some sort, they want to make an example out of you. And that's what's happening to David Rodriguez right now out in California in the Santa Cruz area. He's been arrested. Great liberty activist. He's been at a bunch of events we've been at. You're pretty close to him, Etienne. And is there anywhere people can go to support him or find out more about what's going on?
So I haven't seen a GoFundMe yet, and so
he just got arrested a few days ago, right?
He just got this all happened fairly recently. If that doesn't show up, I may organize one myself.
Has there been a bail hearing yet?
They're not giving him bail. They're refusing bail for him, and they're threatening him with a psych. Yeah, they're putting him up for a psych evaluation because if you don't believe that the government's legitimate, you must be crazy.
If you don't believe in their religion,
right,
then they'll send you to the indoctrination camps.
Go to Gulag.
Yeah, like they're doing out in China right now. We talked about the Chinese torture camps, indoctrination camps earlier this week. Some pretty disturbing stuff, and we were comparing it to the United States. The difference is only in degrees. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that my book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, Exposed, does is it's a playbook. They're all running the same playbook. We're going to give you a flag. We're going to give you a constitution, the holy documents. We're going to put you into mandatory government school where we teach you the religion of the state before you're old enough to evaluate the logic or the morality of that for yourself. We're going to use these unethically manipulative techniques. We're going to take a certain percentage and kind of slide them off into the scouting programs where kind of pre-military training where you're going to get an extra dose of flag worship and how to fold the flag and caress the flag and salute the flag. And then we'll shave your head and we'll put you in the uniform, the single form conformity. We'll teach you how to kill and murder. And if you really think about
it's not murder when you do it for the state.
It's murder when you do it for the state. And if you really if you really think about it, what does the government school system produce? It produces murderers. And once you understand how the system works, it's creepy.
That sounds drastic, but it's real. That's actually true.
100%. They produce murderers.
Well, I'm glad you called earlier the government schools churches. I've actually been calling the courts churches as well, like the Federal District Church of
the judge
New
wears
Hampshire.
Vestments.
Oh, yeah.
He sits on high. He sits above you. It's a scam.
You're literally sitting in pews.
You're sitting in pews. You're sitting in pews.
I mean, how much more obvious could it be?
In defense of the courts, when I went through my driver's license trial, there was just an 8-foot fold out table with a guy in the black getup.
Yeah, but that's a small town.
The black woman, yeah. But he's only like 5'5", so he took his own money, not tax money, and had a riser built.
I believe it.
I'm not kidding.
So that's a small town, though. You're talking about small town New York.
Yeah.
Here in Keene, New Hampshire, which is also a town, not the smallest of towns, but not huge. For years, the court was held in the city council chambers. And so they were making do, basically, until they finally got the $10 million from the state to actually build a quote-unquote real courthouse here. Which, a more proper church. So, with the lack of the budget, it's not going to look the same. But when they got the money to spend, they get the ornate stuff. If you go and you look at the Federal District Church Court in Concord, And I remember I was there for Chris Cantwell, one of his hearings that I was reporting on last year, and just looking up, standing in front of the building and looking straight up at it. It's got, if it was stained glass, you'd know it was a church. But the whole like architecture, the windows in it, it was all so churchy.
Yeah, and
so
everything's
creepy.
oversized to make you feel small and insignificant. These are all psychological techniques, some of which are hundreds of years old, some are thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And my nom de plume, Etienne de la Boétie Square, the original Etienne de la Boétie, he was a French political philosopher he wrote in the 16th century, and he was cataloging these like little tools and techniques that the organized crime system, the monarchy, the original organized crime, you're going to give us your money or we're going to hurt you, was using not just to get obedience, but to get fealty and adoration out of the population, to fall for it. And like I said, it only works until you understand the playbook, until you understand how they do it. And then once you understand how the magician does the trick, then you don't get fooled by the trick anymore.
Yep, you're outside of that paradigm.
And more people are waking up to this every single day. It is a revolution that's only going in one direction.
And maybe that's why we're seeing such large numbers at the Liberty events this year, record-setting numbers.
Record-setting numbers, and I think that's why you're seeing the lockdowns and this economic warfare against independent wealth, and like the government is now kind of on the ropes, man. I think they can see the handwriting on the wall. They know their time is short. I mean, it's going to be it's all coming out.
Man, I hope it's really short.
Yeah.
Yeah, the machine has a ton of bells and whistles, and everybody gets so enthralled with the bells and the whistles and the whole circus that surrounds it, and they just assume that this is the reality. But if they stood back and just looked at the machine for what it was without the bells and whistles, at some point you got to ask yourself, does this thing work?
Well, you can see it chopping off heads and blowing people up. So, I mean, it is working.
Okay, so what does it do again?
Well, that works, but
killing.
I'll tell you what doesn't work. That Constitution. So it doesn't protect rights. It doesn't limit government. And so it
makes people feel good.
Con like you've been conned.
As if you've been conned. And that's really what it is. The idea that a couple dozen slave owners on a continent of 3 million people can go into a room and write down on a fancy piece of paper that they alone get to make up rules for everybody and steal the wealth of others.
They don't represent me, and they wouldn't have then.
They wouldn't have then, and it'd be the same as if 3 dozen of us went into a room in Keene and wrote down on a piece of paper that we alone get to make up rules for everybody and steal the wealth of others, and then have a small amount of people participate in an election, and then have the media go, it's valid, we have a new government.
Yeah, they blew it up.
It's a republic if you can keep it.
It's crazy.
Thanks, Uncle Ben.
You want to join the show here, 603-283-6160. I hope you're right, Etienne, that there is this awakening going on, that people are really, keying in to what the state really is, what the government really is, which is just a group of men and women that are using violence to achieve their ends and get their way.
And it's really important now more than ever when you have an awakening like this. Now there's another word for awakening, in my opinion, and that's vacuum. So if there's going to be a vacuum, we got to find a way to fill that vacuum, or it's going to fill itself with stuff that might not be good for us, which could be a different form of statism that's even worse. So right now is a good time to really get out there and start teaching people about freedom.
You nailed it. I mean, Matt, you said it earlier. And so I'm looking forward to picking back up and writing the book Voluntarism, because we've got to begin giving people a template of how do you roll it back? How do you privatize essential services? It's going to be key.
We will continue here. Got time for you if you want to join the show. 603-283-6160. There's still lots in the news to talk about as well. You had a Taliban response, Matt, to the U.S. withdrawal, or apparent withdrawal from Afghanistan. We can still talk about that, plus some crazy COVID news. You can share your thoughts with us. 603-283-6160. Here, this is Free Talk Live. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, do this right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it. And once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world.
So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Police in Haiti have killed or arrested the gunman suspected of murdering President Jovenel Moïse. They say they're still looking for the people who planned the assassination. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more.
At least 4 gunmen have been killed and 6 more detained in the assassination of the Haitian president. Haitian officials say 1, perhaps 2 of the suspects are Americans. The president was shot dead at his home early on Wednesday. His wife was seriously injured and she's been flown to Florida for treatment in a hospital. Angry civilians have joined in the hunt for the assassins, capturing some suspects themselves and setting fire to vehicles thought to have been used in the attack. The interim Haitian Prime Minister has appealed for calm and has declared a state of siege.
U.S. President Joe Biden has confirmed the U.S. withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. He said America had succeeded in its mission and rejected the possibility of the Taliban retaking control of the country. Representatives of the Taliban are in Moscow for 2 days to discuss the Islamist movement's recent advances. The Kremlin considers the group a terrorist organization and is concerned about their recent encroachment on the Tajikistan border. Stuart Smith reports from Moscow.
As US-led NATO forces leave Afghanistan, the Taliban has taken territory previously controlled by the Afghan government. Last week, the Taliban forced Afghani troops into neighbouring Tajikistan, planting a flag at the border and securing a checkpoint. Moscow's concerned the Taliban will advance even further, and the Tajikistan government has asked for help. A security arrangement means Russia is obliged to respond. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has ordered 6,000 troops to the region to boost defences.
The U.S. markets closed firmly in the red on Thursday amid fears of surging COVID-19 cases around the world. Stocks closely tethered to the easing of coronavirus restrictions were among those hardest hit during trading hours. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
The announcement that the Tokyo Olympic Games will take place without fans in attendance served as a clear reminder to investors that the COVID-19 pandemic is by no means over. As the more infectious Delta variant spreads, stocks tied to the economic reopening took a hit Thursday. Royal Caribbean and Carnival Cruise Lines both closed the day down more than 1%. Some of the major US airlines took a hit too. The Dow Jones closed the day down 0.75%. The S&P 500 came off record highs to close down 0.9%, and the Nasdaq ended down 0.7%. Some disappointing labour market news was also a drag on the markets. 373,000 Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week, which was more than analysts expected. William Denzelo, New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. I'm pretty sure we've been in the fighting section of that statement here in New Hampshire for a number of years, probably at least a decade. I don't know how close we are to the winning aspect of it, but we're just talking about sort of what it's going to take during the break there, and I'm going to pick that conversation back up. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
Etienne de la Boetie, squared.
And Matt.
And check out Etienne's book, It's Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed. You can go and get it over at government-scam.com. We were just discussing, what's it going to take to get over the next hump, to, see the end game, the light at the end of the tunnel of the end of the state in a peaceful manner. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned the Porcupine Freedom Festival, not this year, but several years ago. There was a time when the government of the state of New Hampshire, the people calling themselves the government of New Hampshire, the Department of Revenue was who it was. They had showed up to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and I happened to be at the what they call the TV room at the time, so I was right out by the parking lot, and I saw their car roll into the parking lot. And of course, they got their seal, they got their gang sign right on the side of the car, right? So I'm like, this doesn't normally happen at PorcFest. Normally, the government agents, if they're there, they're undercover. So they normally don't make an appearance in any sort of uniform or official manner. I'm like, something's up. So I grabbed my camera, went down there and started recording, sent out a two-way communication to the rest of the campground, letting people know that they were there. Within seconds, there was a group of maybe, I think initially 12, maybe then 20 plus people that surrounded these guys. And you said you'd pulled this video up to show it to some folks.
I probably showed it to a dozen people over the years, but I was just showing somebody last week, what happened. And that really is. So when I think the way that we win is when enough people within the population of New Hampshire understand how the scam works and the illegitimacy and criminality of government to the point of when either the order followers, the enforcers show up, or the revenue agents show up, or whoever it is, they get laughed at. Like, you've been tricked, you've been chumped,
and
you've shaved your head, you're in a costume. It's a religion. They slid you a religion. Like, everybody here understands it except
we
you.
know the scam.
Yeah. Everybody
Sucker.
understands sucka, and then that's it. Nobody wants to be the chump.
Loser.
Nobody wants to be the chump.
You fell for it. Jimmy fell for it.
You're in a costume, dude. You're wearing they shaved your head. They shaved your head.
So. And that's what happened. Basically, they had come to the campground intending to intimidate every single vendor, especially the food vendors specifically, because in New Hampshire, there's no quote-unquote sales tax for normal items, but if you're selling prepared food, then there is what they call the meals and rooms tax. And so their intention was to go vendor to vendor, anybody that was selling any semblance of prepared food, and threaten them and demand that they collect taxes, because they've known, I'm sure, for years at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, people don't get their permits. People don't pull permits. They don't ask for permission for the most part. And the first place they went to was actually one of the few vendors who'd ever did actually pull a permit. It was kind of like a fairgrounds vendor who'd gotten wind that this was a big event and they just wanted to set up and make some money. They weren't libertarians necessarily. They're just, selling elephant ears or French fries or whatever it was. That was like the first front and center place. So that was where they went to, and they did not go anywhere else. We scared them away from that park. They went to that one spot, and they would have gone through the whole park if they hadn't gotten the attention that they got. And
there's video of that.
Oh yeah.
We gave them a great video. Do you know the name?
I would say search the Free Keen channel for PorcFest and agents, or PorcFest and tax or something
collectors.
Like that.
Yeah, you'll find it.
You'll find it. It's there. It's pretty entertaining.
Absolutely worth seeing to understand the power of what is happening in New Hampshire. They have never been back.
No.
I mean, think about that.
And they didn't last more than one place.
And they did not last more than one place. And they got laughed at and they got made fun of. And that is how we win.
I wonder how long they had to drive to get to that spot.
Probably from Concord.
Probably.
Hour and a half.
Got spun around and pushed away.
Yeah. It was amazing. And that's what should happen. And that's what needs to happen. And it was easy to make it happen at the Porcupine Freedom Festival because there we had a concentration of people, large numbers, easy ways to communicate and get quick response. And we are starting to get those numbers in some cities like Manchester. There's a lot of people that live on the west side of Manchester who are free staters and libertarian, liberty activists. Keene, of course, has always been a hot spot. The Cell 411 has been a key tool for this for a long time. Unfortunately, it kind of fell into disrepair like over a year ago with the guy that created it, and Shire Free Church took it on as a project. We sort of rescued Cell 411 from imminent demise. And
it's a great tool.
It's a great tool. I believe it's still in an operable condition. It's operating, but it's buggy, and we were about to roll out some fixes and open source the thing when the raid happened in March, and Nobody, our co-host Nobody, and I were the two key main operators on bringing this thing back to life, and he's still behind bars. He was the programmer. I was just kind of like, making sure the bills got paid and managing the system. So like the bills are getting paid, but our head programmer's behind bars right now, and the feds took the computer that he was using to do the programming. So like one of the best tools we had for organizing responses like this is kind of on the ropes at the moment. So it was awfully coincidental that they happened to conduct this raid literally days before Cell 411 was going to be open source. And now we're trying to get back into the servers, but we're missing a key, and it's like, it's bad right now.
So let's talk about how do you win the whole thing. Yeah. And so, the problem is that it's the government, it's organized crime using government as a technique in cooperation with media and academia, and they're controlling the information that people receive. And I break down in the book on the old media side, it's 5 or 6, monopoly media companies running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries to give everybody the illusion there's all these different.
Yeah, you've got a cool chart in the book that lays it all out.
Media ownership chart showing you that News Corp owns 175 newspapers, and they own television distribution and television programming, and they own magazines, and they own internet properties, and they own satellite networks, and they're all different names, so you think that all of these are kind of independent. You don't realize they're all rolling up to News Corp as just one of the,
like six
examples. It's really more like 5.
Yeah, didn't Disney buy News Corp?
There's even more consolidation.
Right, you're going to have to update the chart.
Yeah,
it's been a few years.
So that's the old media side. On the new media side, there's about 2 to 3 dozen what I call DARPA front companies. So like we've had the internet before anybody else had the internet. We knew what key technologies that we needed to control to be able to control perception. We're going to give these companies unlimited funds to consolidate their own little portion of the internet food chain. And this is Google, Facebook, Twitter, Discuss the Comment Engine, Reddit, Wikipedia, Netflix, Amazon, etc. And so we're controlling perception. How do you get around it? You got to go door to door. And so I designed the book to appeal to visual learners, it's backed up by either an 8 or a 16 gigabit flash drive with all the evidence, all the full scale media ownership charts, etc. And you really need to drop off a documentary as well. But for about $1 million, I could put 100,000 copies of the book, a flash drive, and a documentary, and do 36 town hall meetings in 12 different communities in New Hampshire. And so there's something called the 100th monkey effect, where everybody just kind of, where a population all come to the same, understanding. And so you've got to get people talking about the illegitimacy of government, and you got to give them the evidence of government and media criminality. And so if you were to, and you don't have to win everybody, and so you can use kind of demographic science to target the 10 to 15% of the population that really, really matters. The entrepreneurs, the business owners.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to go after like registered Democrats or whatever.
No. You go after the people that matter, that are influential sneezers, the professoriate, the bloggers, the vloggers, the entrepreneurs, the business executives, the media, and they will drag the rest of society with them once they realize what's going on.
We continue. Your call's welcome. The number here is 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live. You can join us and take control of the airwaves. Bring up whatever's on your mind.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm.
You can't win if you don't enter, and you actually can improve your chances of winning a prize drawing if you wrinkle up your entry blank. I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com, and I speak from experience. Why this works: if they'll be spinning the drum before drawing, your entry blank will move around more than, and not adhere to, other perfectly flat entry blanks. And if they don't spin the drum and merely reach into a box full of other perfectly flat entry blanks, many of which are sticking together, yours will feel different to the person reaching in. When you win, act surprised. And if you're looking for work, this is a metaphor. For more tips on sticking out in a world where just too much blends into the blah, 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 hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically 2 types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. We have open phones for you at 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio with you here tonight, it's Ian.
Etienne de la Boetie Squared.
And Matt.
And we're going to go into your calls and thoughts. Coming up, we've still got other things in the news worth talking about, including the Taliban and their response to what's going on with the withdrawal of troops. Plus, COVID distancing may have weakened children's immune systems. Surprise, surprise. Say experts. We'll tell you about all those things if we get the chance, but your calls come first here, so we're going to go to the phones and to the fun. We've got first up in New Jersey, Dan is on the line. Dan, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hi, Ian. I was wondering what you guys thought about Biden's statements that he wants to send people door to door to find out the vaccination status of everybody, and how would you guys deal with that if they came to your door? And who would it be that would actually do that?
I'd like to answer the question, but I want to hear from you, Etienne. What do you think about it?
So, I mean, again, so it's a religion. It's an indoctrinated pseudo religion, and so it's almost like the Mormons going door to door and talking to you about your Lord and Savior Joe Biden has sent me, and so I mean I would laugh at them. I'm a little bit different. I'd give them a copy of my book and explain how the system works, and then hopefully send them packing. But they're going to get laughed at in my neighborhood.
What about you, Matt?
I would just tell them none of your business.
The way I would handle it is the way I handled the census people. Now, for whatever reason, they didn't come by here. Well, no, they did come by. But in 2010, they knocked on my door, and I had my video camera ready, and I pulled it out and had a conversation with them. It's all on Free Keen on the YouTube channel. So if you want to see how I handled that situation, I'd probably do it very similarly. Like, look, I'm not participating in your religion. I don't subscribe to your beliefs, and you're not going to make me. So that's how I would handle it. What do you think, Dan?
Well, I actually like that idea. Pull out your video camera and make an interview about it and say that I don't subscribe to your religion. That's a good one. I like that. I was thinking of some creative ways to handle it. The census people, I just basically avoided them the whole time because I'm from New Jersey. And the last thing we want is another congressman in New Jersey by me putting my number in. So I don't want to do that.
Way to go. Thank you for your service to our country.
Yeah, this year, and I think the video of this interaction is actually on the hard drive that the FBI took in March. So when the census person, I just hadn't gotten around to doing anything with it yet. So I don't know when we're going to ever see this video. But what happened was a sort of known liberal hard left activist came up to the porch. He was the census worker, and I know him because Keene's a small town, right? Like, I know who this guy is. And he comes up on the porch, and I'm like, oh, hey, Bill, how's it going? What's going on? Oh, yeah, I'm here for the census. Of course, I had we knew he was there, right? We saw him park and go up to the other houses. So I grabbed the video camera, set it out on the porch. We were ready to go. Nobody, our co-host, was out on the porch with me. And so we just had a little chat with him, and they never came back after that, because they know who we are, and they know we're not going to participate. We're not going to legitimize their system. So I hope that we end up finding that footage when the FBI gives us our stuff back at some point. But it's been several years since the first raid they did, and we're still waiting on getting that footage back. So it might be half a decade before the next census video comes out. But if you grab a video camera,
I did get my Ron Paul Liberty dollars back over a decade later that were stolen when they raided
the Liberty Dollar raid.
Liberty Dollar raid, yeah.
Very
I got
cool.
them back like a decade later.
I was too paranoid that they were like building a list of people that had Liberty Dollars, so I didn't file for them. So they kept them.
Not only did I file for them, but every letter I'd send them, I'd point out the criminality, what they were involved in, and I would send it to the prosecutor because he kept sending his email address, and I would just reply explaining the criminality of the government and what he was involved in, that he's living off money stolen from others at the point of a gun, and just just give it to him every time they'd send me something.
Well, now they have all the Liberty Dollars because I still had a bunch of them for the physical 1 ounce silvers here in the house that I donated to the church years ago, and now they're all in the FBI's possession. So now we got to fight to get that back, and who knows how easy that's going to be because I don't have the receipts. They were bought back in the year 2001. Back when I was a Liberty associate with the Liberty Dollar. But anyway, Dan, the point being, if you grab a video camera, it puts the pressure on these people in a way they aren't expecting. They're not going to be used to that. You probably will be the first person to actually put them on camera as they're going door to door, and it will make them very uncomfortable. In the event that you don't have the ability to say, make a quick cell 411 call and get a half a dozen neighbors, freedom-loving neighbors, to show up and back you up and really make them feel uncomfortable, the video camera can accomplish that with just you, and it will likely send them packing as quick as they possibly can.
Yeah, and also, I would point out to them, do you really know what's in this vaccine? What are you going to be responsible if what you're doing here results in somebody being permanently disabled or?
And no, the answer is no. They will not be responsible. They can't be sued. The pharmaceutical companies are immune from lawsuits.
No, but if you're going door to door encouraging people to take an experimental vaccine that's already led to tens, thousands of deaths and disabilities, what's your responsibility in this, man? Aren't
None.
you? Yeah, no, but
it's a good question to ask.
Yeah, it's a good question to.
I suspect anybody that they send door to door to take such surveys would probably be hardcore subscribers of the religion. So.
Oh yeah, but still, to even ask them that question might get the gears turning. Like, ooh, I don't want to take responsibility for this.
If after the last year hasn't gotten their gears turning yet, man,
True,
I don't know
true.
if there's it might be better just to cut communication and walk away from that one.
Well, that's why one of the better ideas is to get the hell out of a place like New Jersey, Dan, and get up to New Hampshire, where you actually can be physically nearby other people that are of like mind.
Lowest unemployment rate in the country, even on a good day.
And they're still hiring everywhere.
They're hiring like crazy everywhere, literally everywhere right now for all kinds of jobs.
Well, I'm thinking about it. I was at Fork Fest last week, and
good deal.
I'm a high voltage electrician, and I bet you I could find a job there pretty easy.
Yes, I'm sure you could.
Right on, man.
Come home.
Thanks for the call, dude. I appreciate you calling in and asking the question. We got to continue, though. We got Clay. He's on the line, calling from the Pacific Northwest. You're on Free Talk Live. Hello, Clay.
Howdy.
Hey, Clay.
So as far as I understand it, COVID has a 0.04% mortality rate, right?
Yeah, amongst like 80-year-olds or something like that. You got to be pretty old to even have a chance at this, dying from this.
So they push this experimental gene therapy on everybody. And meanwhile, there's all these different people with ailments in the U.S. that can't get treatments. I mean, experimental stuff. My dad was just recently diagnosed with ALS. You think he could find, just a clinical trial? No, you can't. And there's all these drugs available out on the market that could help him, but the FDA won't approve them. I guess my question is, so why can we push an experimental gene therapy that was developed in under a year, but all these different treatments for people that have a lifespan of 3 to 5 years after diagnosis, there's concerns over whether it's going to kill them or not. And these people are like, I'm up for anything.
Yeah, they're willing to put any kind of experimental medication in their body, and they're not allowed to. What do you think, Etienne?
Yeah.
It's a Jim Jones death cult. I mean, it is Jim Jones level. Like, we're going to, anything the government says, we will inject, even though the government has got a, long-term record of harming people with vaccines. They've known since the Simpsonwood meetings. I don't know if you know, but the Simpsonwood meetings over a decade ago, but if you Googled RFK Jr., Simpsonwood, and Rolling Stone, they knew that their vaccines were causing autism and neurological effects well over a decade ago, and then they covered it up. But the notes of the Simpsonwood meetings got leaked, and you could see them talking about acknowledging these neurological issues with with just the regular old childhood immunization schedule. And so now people are willing to, and then the movie Vaxxed, exposed a whistleblower within the CDC, naming names, talking about destroying evidence on the MMR vaccine that it was causing autism and neurological effects. And now people gotta kind of rush to take a experimental vaccine that hasn't even been, through a year's worth of testing from three of the 4 companies are convicted felons.
Well,
this is
since
madness.
you mentioned the documentary, that documentary Vaxxed. I watched a documentary this year. I've mentioned it on the show before. I'll mention it again. But it's called House of Numbers, and it features Anthony Fauci, and it has to do with the AIDS epidemic. I'll leave it at that. There was a lot of money behind that in the 80s, and he was in charge of all of that, too. So,
Clay, thank you for the call tonight. Appreciate hearing from you. We got a full hour to go. If you want to join us, the phones are open. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Police in Haiti have killed or arrested the gunman suspected of murdering President Jovenel Moïse. They say they're still looking for the people who planned the assassination. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more.
At least 4 gunmen have been killed and 6 more detained in the assassination of the Haitian president. Haitian officials say 1, perhaps 2 of the suspects are Americans. The president was shot dead at his home early on Wednesday. His wife was seriously injured and she's been flown to Florida for treatment in a hospital. Angry civilians have joined in the hunt for the assassins, capturing some suspects themselves and setting fire to vehicles thought to have been used in the attack. The interim Haitian Prime Minister has appealed for calm and has declared a state of siege.
U.S. President Joe Biden has confirmed the U.S. withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. He said America had succeeded in its mission and rejected the possibility of the Taliban retaking control of the country. Representatives of the Taliban are in Moscow for 2 days to discuss the Islamist movement's recent advances. The Kremlin considers the group a terrorist organization and is concerned about their recent encroachment on the Tajikistan border. Stuart Smith reports from Moscow.
As US-led NATO forces leave Afghanistan, the Taliban has taken territory previously controlled by the Afghan government. Last week, the Taliban forced Afghani troops into neighbouring Tajikistan, planting a flag at the border and securing a checkpoint. Moscow's concerned the Taliban will advance even further, and the Tajikistan government has asked for help. A security arrangement means Russia is obliged to respond. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has ordered 6,000 troops to the region to boost defences.
The U.S. markets closed firmly in the red on Thursday amid fears of surging COVID-19 cases around the world. Stocks closely tethered to the easing of coronavirus restrictions were among those hardest hit during trading hours. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
The announcement that the Tokyo Olympic Games will take place without fans in attendance served as a clear reminder to investors that the COVID-19 pandemic is by no means over. As the more infectious Delta variant spreads, stocks tied to the economic reopening took a hit Thursday. Royal Caribbean and Carnival Cruise Lines both closed the day down more than 1%. Some of the major US airlines took a hit too. The Dow Jones closed the day down 0.75%. The S&P 500 came off record highs to close down 0.9%, and the Nasdaq ended down 0.7%. Some disappointing labour market news was also a drag on the markets. 373,000 Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week, which was more than analysts expected. William Denzelo, New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. It has been 16 years since a series of 4 coordinated suicide attacks in London targeted commuters on the city's public transport system. 56 people, including the 4 bombers, died on July the 7th, 2011. 3 bombs were detonated on the Underground and 1 on a bus by Islamist terrorists who perpetrated the worst terror attack ever on British soil. Sajda Mughal was one commuter who survived.
I was on the Piccadilly Tube. In fact, if I'd sat on the usual first carriage that I did every single day, it might have been a very different story because the bomber was on the first carriage. However, that day I was running late, so I didn't rush to the front to sit on the first carriage. I boarded more to the middle, near to the end, but getting onto that tube and unfortunately having to experience what I did that day. And that 1 hour down there, and I've said this continuously, felt literally like a lifetime. And it's only when I heard the emergency services and that one, and I will forever remember that voice, one male voice coming through the carriages saying, "It's police, we're coming to get you."
The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, marked the 16th anniversary yesterday, laying a wreath and observing a moment of silence at the 7/7 Memorial in London's Hyde Park. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. Police in Haiti say they're still looking for the people who planned the assassination of the country's president. Representatives of the Taliban are in Moscow to discuss the Islamist movement's recent advances in Afghanistan. And U.S. markets close firmly in the red amid fears of surging COVID-19 cases around the world. And that's the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
If you're the parent of a man-child, you know how frustrating it can sometimes be. The piercing sound of his video games waking you up at 2 in the morning. His insatiable hunger and inability to cook anything for himself. The messes he makes. The stress can be overwhelming.
Something will set them off, such as their man-child will tell them that they don't know how to tie a tie even though they're almost 30. They'll start shaking them and yelling and saying, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why don't you get a real job instead of working part-time at a board game store?"
The results of shaken man-child syndrome are devastating. Trauma caused by the brain colliding with the inside of the man-child's skull can lead to cognitive disabilities, making it even more unlikely he'll finally marry the girl he's been having a long-distance online relationship with for 6 years. Or it can even lead to death.
He's not spilling cereal all over the couch or leaving his beard clippings in the bathroom sink intentionally. He truly does not know what he's doing.
For the Lab Report, I'm Stuart Adams.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live. We are kicking off the third hour of the program here. Open phones, as always, where you may bring up whatever's on your mind. Our number is 603-283-6160. We started out talking about the troop withdrawal. Supposedly it's going to happen this time from Afghanistan. And
allegedly.
Yeah, we'll see. And then we got into more of just kind of a general discussion about the state itself and how it sure does resemble a really creepy, like, death cult religion, and what it's going to take to put it to an end on a peaceful basis. With you in the studio here tonight, you've got me, Ian.
Etienne de la Boetie, squared.
And Matt.
And we're going to continue with, of course, your calls and thoughts. Also, Matt, you had a Taliban guy who had some thoughts on the whole American government situation over there, etc. And you wanted to relay some of those. So I want to get into that as well. And let's go first to your phone calls and thoughts, though. Jessica is on the line calling from Missouri. Jessica, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I am a writer, and I'm trying right now to format a book that would depict a free state, that was, that was libertarian in nature. And the problem I'm coming across is, and yeah, I know I'm 66 years old, and I've been proselytized that, that there has to be a government my entire life. I know that, and I'm trying to unlearn that right now. But what I wanted to find out was how can I depict, a free state where people are free to just live their lives without the interference or intervention of the government, because there would be no government. But how do you live your life, as and do what you want to do without interfering or usurping the rights of others? It's like, how do you do that without having some form of enforcement of the rights of others, and what would that look like if not government?
Great question.
Let me jump in because I'm in the process of writing a book on it called Volunteerism, How the Only Ism Fair for Everybody Leads to Harmony and Prosperity for All. And the way that I would encourage you to think about it is that the government is a monopoly provider of services. Whether or not you want to subscribe to their services or not, they're the monopoly provider. But everything that the government does, from creating roads to armed protective services to dispute resolutions, which they call courts, all of that, there's a market for all of those services. And absent the monopoly provider, you would see other people compete for your dollar in the market. And so you wouldn't necessarily have the monopoly police. You would have Brinks and ADT and West Tech.
Or maybe just a neighborhood watch or something, right?
Or it could be a neighborhood watch, but you'd see companies that were willing to provide armed protective services, and you'd see companies that would be willing to provide, what they call courts, we'll just call dispute resolution. And so you'd probably pay $50 a month, for Brinks, and it would probably come with an alarm system. And if somebody was breaking into your house, then, a guy with a gun, a trained guy with a gun shows up. But the difference between him and the monopoly government is he doesn't delusionally think that he has rights that other people don't have. And because you yourself have a right to life, liberty, and property, you can delegate that right because you have that right inherent within you to a security company to exercise that right on your behalf. You don't have
but what happens if so someone breaks in, so the security company come and cart them away? Where do they put them, and what happens to that person? It's like, what do you do with no courts, no government? So what? See, I just don't get how I can accurately depict that.
So, Jessica, you're asking some of the best questions out there.
These are the greatest questions. These are the best.
These are the questions of somebody who's been really thinking about, okay, what's this going to look like? It's hard to really have some idea. And the thing is, the best we can do is sit here and say, well, it might look like this or it might look like that. Like we could sit here and speculate, but ultimately we don't really know what the market would come up with when it comes to competing enterprises offering services. But there are a few things we can say for sure are true. And you touched on this, Etienne, where an agent who's working for a private company that's contracted to provide protection for people, they're under contract, and they will have liability for their actions, unlike government agents, unlike government police who have no liability or virtually no liability. They come along, they kill some innocent person. It's like the investigation almost always finds out that they are completely innocent and they're moving on with their lives and they don't get fired and nothing bad happens to them. But if a private agency were to come along and let's say they arrest the wrong guy, they figure, oh, so-and-so did this kidnapping or this robbery or whatever, and they go and they arrest this person and put them into whatever facility they put them into, whatever that looks like. And if they got the wrong guy and that's proven, then they all of a sudden owe somebody for kidnapping them and taking them away from their freedom and whatever that's worth according to whatever we call the courts or the arbitrators at the time. I mean, there's some really key elements that would be very, very different regardless of how it's all structured.
Yeah,
right?
and to not put the cart before the horse, I'd like to address this from a different direction too. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty in this question. It's not an uncommon question. This is a very good version of it, though. Normally you hear about who's going to build the roads. This is a way more important version of that question. A lot of the people who are robbing houses now are doing it out of bare poverty. And what is the number one creator of poverty?
Government.
That's true.
So if we had a freer society, we'd have a more prosperous society. There'd be way fewer poverty, impoverished people, and therefore you'd have less crime.
That's a good point. And also, a lot of libertarian types would say that justice would be more likely to be dealt out in the form of restitution in a more liberty-oriented society instead of a punitive criminal state where, if I get victimized by somebody, whether it's somebody breaking and entering or just hurting a loved one or something like whatever it is, in the current system, usually I get victimized not only by the criminal, but then by the band of criminals calling themselves the government, because then I've got to pay to keep that person who hurt me or, stole something in a prison cell. And a lot of the times they don't ever have to pay restitution. They just go sit it off in a jail cell or a prison cell for X number of years, and then they're out, and I still don't have my, any restitution or compensation for the damage done. There are some exceptions to that. There are some courts that will award some limited restitution in some cases, but I think we would see more of that. And when criminals know that they're actually going to have to pay back the victims that they victimized, that might give them something to think about.
Yeah, and I think in such a society as well, you'd see insurance companies, maybe not as we think of them, but much smaller firms, probably not giant, massive firms. But I'd imagine they'd be offering policies, and people who exhibited good social behavior and were nice to their neighbors and stuff probably paid low insurance rates for XYZ. For the arbitration we were talking about before, and the court systems and such things could probably be even partially paid for as a subscription basis through an insurance company.
Well, actually, bringing up the insurance companies brings up another point about restitution. If you're insured, then the insurance company, presuming that they got the guy and you're not trying to commit fraud against the insurance company, if you were actually victimized and you can show that, you'd get paid by your insurance provider in full.
Yep.
And then the criminal would owe the insurance company by right of subrogation. So they wouldn't have to you wouldn't have to worry about whether or not this guy was going to pay you back or not over the next 20 years or whatever.
It's going to get handled, and also it'd be very, very difficult for the bad guy to get insurance after that.
I'm looking forward to reading the book, Etienne, when it comes out. But right now, if you're looking for some good reading material on this one, Jessica, The Market for Liberty is my favorite. It was written by the Tannehills, and as I understand it, they disappeared at some point. Like, nobody knows what happened to this couple. And Morris and Linda Tannehill, written in the 1970s, way ahead of its time as far as envisioning, things like these market-based systems, like what it could look like. They have a good kind of pitch.
Yeah, and you can buy that book, or you can read it. I think you can read that book for free
online
on Mises.org.
Yeah, and there's a video. There's an audio book that I cut.
That's
book
right.
Years ago. What's that, Jessica?
What's the title of the book?
It's The Market for Liberty, written by the Tannehills.
That's exactly what you're looking for.
The Machinery of Freedom is good as well.
It's also a good one, no doubt. Jessica, thanks for the call tonight. Appreciate hearing. Appreciate the questions. Good questions, thoughtful questions, and tough ones to answer, too, because we've never been there before. It's new.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Free Talk Live.
I think you guys should be encouraging people to drop the drugs, drop the alcohol, and live a straight life.
Why?
And that's freedom.
Well,
is freedom.
How can you say? I mean, maybe it's freedom for you, but what if I enjoy altering my consciousness?
Well, I think it's sad.
Why?
It's a sad existence. when people have to be addicted to drugs and alcohol.
I'm not addicted.
Now you're assuming addiction.
Alcohol, we're talking about marijuana, we're talking about drug use in general.
What about caffeine? Are we talking about caffeine?
I'm talking about something that what you just said is mind-altering.
So caffeine certainly is.
If you have a chocolate candy bar and there's caffeine in it, it doesn't get you high. You know what the difference
well, wait a minute.
Christy, I'm sensitive to caffeine, and I can tell you 2 Diet Cokes will make me a very angry man.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and the number if you want to join us here, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Also want to say thank you to the Liberty Block, who is a Free Talk Live Silver amplifier. AMP stands for Advertise, Market, and Promote. It is an idea that allows you to get behind what we do here on Free Talk Live, which is talking about, for a lot of people, some ideas they've never considered before on national broadcast talk radio. And, of course, online, we've got a podcast. We've got video streaming. By the way, we're now streaming live on Odyssey, which we've been supporting Odyssey and Library since before Odyssey was called Odyssey. It used to be just LBRY.com, and they rebranded last year, and they've taken off in a big way. Lots of YouTube creators are making the move over to Odyssey because it's an uncensorable video platform. We're streaming there. We're part of their streaming beta. So check that out at video.freetalklive.com. But it's thanks to listeners like the Liberty Block who are putting up $5 a month to the AMP program, and you can do it over at amp.freetalklive.com. We got PayPal. We've got debit card, credit card. You can do it either way. Over at amp.freetalklive.com, you get some cool perks, get some bonuses, and we definitely appreciate it. It's Ian, Etienne, and Matt in the studio here tonight. At the very beginning of the show, there's a story at NPR. Lots of the media is reporting that Biden is, quote, defending his decision. And who's he defending it against? Apparently, people in the news media who are attacking him, they're surprised that he would do what Donald Trump was apparently working on doing, which was withdrawing troops from Afghanistan. Remember when Trump promised to draw down a significant portion of the troops in, I think it was December of 2020? The mainstream media was yelling for blood. They want more war because, that means more dollars in their pockets from advertisers and whatever other people benefit from that sort of thing. But Biden, surprisingly, is taking the same tone as Trump has done, where he...
I wonder who else's hands are in the whole occupation of that place, because there's also, we got all the climate people that are always clamoring and they want to push electric cars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And electric cars run on batteries, for whom one of the main ingredients of is found in Afghanistan.
Lithium.
Lithium. So apparently Afghanistan has giant quantities of this rare element. And I wonder what's going to happen to the price of an electric car, or who's going to be in control of Afghanistan when they pull the plug on the occupation.
Well, as Biden points out here in this, again, NPR.org reporting that he's planning on getting the troops out by the end of August. He'd originally, I guess, or not originally, but they said it was going to be earlier this year. Then it moved to September 11th. Now it's moving up to the end of August. But he is saying that they will continue to support the Afghan government. That means foreign aid, of course. Maintain a diplomatic presence in the country, and work to speed up efforts to relocate Afghan nationals who assisted U.S. forces. So by no means is the United States federal government's involvement in Afghanistan completely done, but purportedly the military aspect is going to end. Will this mean that will there be the contractors on the ground, the military contractors to replace them, the defense contractors? They haven't admitted to that yet, but of course that's a possibility. So we still don't know exactly what this is going to look like, but according to the story, he added the U.S. will soon begin flying interpreters, translators, and others who assisted the American military to, quote, U.S. facilities outside the continental United States, as well as third-party countries, unquote, so they can wait for special visa applications to be processed. Biden also insisted, despite skepticism from many experts, that the Afghan government has the capacity to hold off a resurgent Taliban. He said, quote, do I trust the Taliban? No, but I trust the capacity of the Afghan military, who is better trained, better equipped, and more competent in terms of conducting war. Now, Matt, you came across something regarding one of the Taliban folks and his thoughts regarding the American government. What did you learn today?
Yeah, that's pretty cool too, really. I've only watched a little bit of it, but he was interviewed at length. His name is Suhail Shaheen. That's Suhail Shaheen, Shaheen. And I'm finding it on YouTube on TRT World, and it's a 25-minute interview.
TRT World.
TRT
World.
World.
Is that Turkish?
It's, I don't know.
Okay,
maybe it's just a YouTube channel.
Yep.
But the interviewer's doing a great job with the guy. He's keeping him on track. He kind of wants to go into the ranting phase, but the interviewer keeps him pulled back from that. And the guy's just answering questions directly, and it seems very honestly and with a lot of heart. And I've always wanted to know what the quote-unquote enemy has to say. And throughout history, it's been kind of hard to, when Osama bin Laden is seen crouching in a cave and they're interpreting stuff, you can't hear his voice. I want to know what his voice is saying, and I want to hear an interpreter interpret what he's actually saying. I don't just want subtitles. This is actually a guy speaking great English, speaking on behalf of the Taliban, and it's I can't wait to watch the rest of it.
Yeah, is there a summary that you can give of what you've seen?
Yes.
What does he have to say?
He is. I think he's personally very dubious of the new agreement to pull out by in the interview. They're saying September 11th, but you said you found an article that said they'd be out by end of August.
That's what the story is. Yeah.
Okay, so he's saying September 11th was the date he was presented that they wanted to be pulled out by. He also mentioned, well, they said the same thing about early May, and they're still here. So I think he's pretty dubious about the intentions. There's no way this guy should trust anything. Hey, no one should trust anything the U.S. government says.
Or the media.
Yeah, or the media. Especially, these poor guys have been, bombed for the last 20 straight years, an entire generation bombed out. So I'm sure that he's got trust issues with the U.S. government. So, but rightly so, I'd say.
So he doesn't believe the government.
He doesn't think they're going anywhere, I don't think.
Well, I guess we'll see. Time will tell. TRT World is Turkish, as I thought. They aren't quite like RT, like Russia Today, which is government funded. They claim that they are financially and editorially independent from the Turkish government. However, Turkey is number 154 out of 179 in the world in press freedom. So it's not the most free place as far as independent media is concerned. If you report negatively about the Turkish government, they're going to come after you.
Yeah, so. This is an interview that has nothing to do with the Turkish government, though. This is about the U.S. and Afghanistan, and I kind of like they're acting as a middleman in this conversation. I'm interested in
shoot me a link, will you?
Sure.
Email me that link, and I'll get it out on our social media over at social.freetalklive.com, which is, of course, where you can go if you want to have more freedom to express yourself. The crackdown of big media, big tech has been happening on the liberty movement quite a bit over the last several months. And so rather than begging Facebook to let you back on, just take your content elsewhere. And we have created that platform for you over at social.freetalklive.com. So I'll be sure we get that on the Free Talk Live social media page here. Just the final thoughts here on the story about Biden. According to NPR, Biden noted that in the end, whether it was the British Empire, the Soviet Union, and now the United States, no world power has ever been able to impose its will permanently on Afghanistan. He said, quote, "It's up to the people of Afghanistan to decide on what government they want, not for us to impose the government on them. No country's ever been able to do that." If only somebody had said that 20 years ago. You know?
If only.
Yeah. Instead, there's thousands of American troops that have, suicidal tendencies and or have already killed themselves and have had their lives ruined. And, of course, then there's the hundreds of thousands of people in, Afghanistan and Iraq that have had their actual lives ruined by bombed houses, destroyed loved ones, ended lives. But better late than never. Hopefully the troops will get pulled out. The number, if you want to join us here, 603-283-6160, especially if you think they should stay.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Police in Haiti have killed or arrested the gunman suspected of murdering President Jovenel Moise. They say they're still looking for the people who planned the assassination. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more.
At least 4 gunmen have been killed and 6 more detained in the assassination of the Haitian president. Haitian officials say 1, perhaps 2 of the suspects are Americans. The president was shot dead at his home early on Wednesday. His wife was seriously injured and she's been flown to Florida for treatment in a hospital. Angry civilians have joined in the hunt for the assassins, capturing some suspects themselves and setting fire to vehicles thought to have been used in the attack. The interim Haitian Prime Minister has appealed for calm and has declared a state of siege.
U.S. President Joe Biden has confirmed the U.S. withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. He said America had succeeded in its mission and rejected the possibility of the Taliban retaking control of the country. Representatives of the Taliban are in Moscow for 2 days to discuss the Islamist movement's recent advances. The Kremlin considers the group a terrorist organization and is concerned about their recent encroachment on the Tajikistan border. Stuart Smith reports from Moscow.
As US-led NATO forces leave Afghanistan, the Taliban has taken territory previously controlled by the Afghan government. Last week, the Taliban forced Afghani troops into neighbouring Tajikistan, planting a flag at the border and securing a checkpoint. Moscow's concerned the Taliban will advance even further, and the Tajikistan government has asked for help. A security arrangement means Russia is obliged to respond. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has ordered 6,000 troops to the region to boost defences.
The U.S. markets closed firmly in the red on Thursday amid fears of surging COVID-19 cases around the world. Stocks closely tethered to the easing of coronavirus restrictions were among those hardest hit during trading hours. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
The announcement that the Tokyo Olympic Games will take place without fans in attendance served as a clear reminder to investors that the COVID-19 pandemic is by no means over. As the more infectious Delta variant spreads, stocks tied to the economic reopening took a hit Thursday. Royal Caribbean and Carnival Cruise Lines both closed the day down more than 1%. Some of the major US airlines took a hit too. The Dow Jones closed the day down 0.75%. The S&P 500 came off record highs to close down 0.9%, and the Nasdaq ended down 0.7%. Some disappointing labour market news was also a drag on the markets. 373,000 Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week, which was more than analysts expected. William Denzelo, New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, the number for you. If you want to join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio with you tonight, you've got Ian.
Etienne de la Boetie squared.
And Matt.
Check out Etienne's book. It's Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed. You can go to government-scam.com, and I imagine you can do some sampling of it there, right?
You can actually download a free preview copy that's got about 90% of it taken out, but you can see the overwhelming majority of it. Like I mentioned earlier, it is designed for visual learners, so there's a lot of media ownership charts, media organizational charts. I'm taking what was invisible and making it visible through visualization. And humans are really good pattern recognition machines. So the book is designed to wake up your friends, your family. If you've ever tried to, explain these concepts to them and you've had a hard time, I may have a very sharp tool to help you, get it across. Because again, most people are visual learners and they come to insight much quicker when they see something versus just hear it.
Plus, it helps to have an expert. When you're trying to bring friends or family members on, these are some of the most skeptical people you'll ever encounter because they know you and they know you're fallible, and they just don't believe what you're saying. So, if you got an expert from out of town, you might have a better chance of getting them to pay attention to something.
Yeah, absolutely.
In other news, TheGuardian.com reporting on surprise, surprise, COVID distancing may have weakened children's immune system. According to experts, scientists are concerned that measures to combat COVID-19 have weakened the immune systems of young children who have not been able to build up resistance to common bugs, leaving them vulnerable when mask wearing and social distancing eventually end. Well, good news for them. Doesn't seem like they're ever planning on ending that stuff. I mean, the mask mandates are they've locked down Sydney again. I don't know if you heard about
I
this.
did not know that.
Yeah, that's also in the news. I got a couple stories about that. Sydney's in a hardcore lockdown. So, yeah, some places the mask mandates are ending, but other places they're ramping up.
They're going to do it every flu season.
I think you're right about that.
Here comes when flu season rolls around. Right now, everybody's like vitamin D rich, but as soon as the flu comes around, flu season, we're going to have COVID again.
Yeah, and I think that that you're absolutely right with that prediction, and that people think they're out of the prison cell, so to speak, the COVID prison cell, and that it's all over and done with. No, it's not done. They've learned how far they can push this. They've learned how obedient people will be.
Some people.
Most people, it seems like, at least around here,
yeah,
in the so-called live free or die state, surprising numbers of people obedient. As soon as the law went away, as soon as the city ordinance went away, as soon as the governor's orders went away, a ton of people took off the masks. So obviously there were a lot of people who were just doing it because they wanted to get along, go along to get along.
Obedience is
the total obedience.
I was not too long ago, I was in Coeur d'Alene, and in Coeur d'Alene, I saw thousands and thousands and thousands of people when we were there. We were there for a couple of days visiting some friends, and I saw 6 masks, a family of 4.
When was this?
This was a month ago.
Okay.
A family of 4 and 2 solos. And that was it. I was seeing thousands and thousands of people. Where I've been living in Cottonwood, Arizona, there's people wearing the mask, but I want to say they're the minority. They're by far the minority. In Arizona, like I don't know about Phoenix, but like in Cottonwood outside of Sedona, I mean I'm in Cottonwood and Sedona a lot. I want to say 25-30%. It's the minority that are wearing the masks, and there's only a small handful of businesses that won't let you in without the mask. And a lot of them are the chains, and if you just go, I got an exemption, they won't say anything.
What are you seeing, Matt, around town here?
I mean, there's a few here and there, really, but
it's a minority now, wouldn't you say? Like 40% at most?
No, less than that, way less than that.
I think it depends on where you go.
I went to Walmart a couple hours ago, and the only person I saw wearing a mask in there was the girl at the customer service desk.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
When Bonnie and I have been out shopping on Sundays, we've been to Market Basket, which is a grocery chain for those that aren't aware. It seems like it's mostly older women that are wearing the masks around here, and or with a boyfriend or something like that.
Retired school teachers
who's wearing a mask. They got that look. I would say at like Walmart on a Sunday, it might be like 30% of customers, and then at Target, it's more like 50% or 40% or something like that. So it's still pretty present in a lot of places. But then again, Keene is the liberal stronghold of New Hampshire, so it's not a fair representation of the rest of the state. But nonetheless, the point is that people are super obedient, and they put
scared.
their kids.
People got to stop living lives in fear.
Yeah, well, that's the big problem here is they put their kids through this stuff. You know, it's one thing if you want to do something because you're afraid, but to transmit that fear to children is just it's unfathomable.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah.
And then to have them, you know, especially the kids that are, you know, real young, that have never had any real interactions with people.
They don't know.
All they know is people with masks on, which is scary stuff. Over the past 14 months, the restrictions on mixing and travel alongside mask wearing and social distancing, according to the article, they claim have reduced the risk of COVID. Although, strangely, in Sydney right now, in Australia, they're saying that... according to, Reuters, 2 weeks into lockdown, Sydney has its worst day for virus cases this year. So the lockdown, 2 weeks later, 2 weeks to clear things out or whatever.
Yeah, and bear in mind, it's winter down there.
That's a good point. Yeah, so it doesn't seem to matter, and they've compared states that have had crackdowns like California to states like Florida. I think Tom Woods did a lot of these comparisons, looking at the numbers, couldn't find anything really statistically significant between like one versus the other, so it didn't seem to matter whether there was a crackdown or not, as far as how many people got COVID, etc.
Well, now we boil down to, let's err on the side of crackdown then.
Well, of course they're gonna do that.
Because it's not about COVID, it's about control.
Right. Yeah, that's what it's always been about.
And it's about economic warfare against independent wealth, private businesses. They don't want you doing good. They want they don't want there to be independent restaurants, independent coffee shops, independent yoga studios. They want people going to chain restaurants, where they can enforce mandates, where you can't earn as much. This is economic warfare. Among other things.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and they've destroyed so many businesses as well. Lots of mom and pop businesses were the ones that were more likely to go out of business during all of this stuff. And it's really amazing that New Hampshire has the unemployment levels that it does. It's basically back to pre-COVID levels as far as its official unemployment. But the bizarre thing is that there's people hiring everywhere. So that's what's weird to me is like how can New Hampshire have pre-COVID levels of unemployment, but yet everybody's hiring? That's what's so weird.
I think there's a lot of people moving here because there's a lot of people moving out of the big cities. And I can't tell you, I've talked to so many people in Tennessee, in Florida, where New Yorkers or people from San Francisco or whatever just came in and like bought up all the homes that are out there. I mentioned we were in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. That's the #1 housing market in the United States. People are like flocking there.
Idaho's been also pretty freedom friendly in the whole COVID thing.
So people are moving out of the socialist hellholes of California and New York and Massachusetts
and creating
New
new ones where they didn't used to be them.
Leave your California ideas in California. Right. We're going in the other direction. And got to reinforce that with people that move here that like, hey, if you want that, you got to go to a different state. We got to have one state in the United States that's going in the opposite direction, that's rolling back taxes. You got to have a laboratory of liberty to be able to prove that you don't need government. So if you're for big government, this is not your state. Get the F out.
I think Idaho was the #3 highest ranked state on the Free State Project vote, if I recall correctly. I believe it was in the top 3. I think it was New Hampshire by far, and then Wyoming, and then I think it was Idaho.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, actually.
3. And you know who's running for governor out there?
Ammon Bundy.
Oh.
Yeah, he announced his campaign a couple of weeks ago. I've got that story too. You can call in, share your thoughts, bring up whatever's on your mind. Our number here is 603-283-6160. If you don't know the name Ammon Bundy, we'll tell you a little bit more about him and who he is. He was leading the charge against the masks out there, but he made news many years ago in the whole Bundy situation in Nevada, and then subsequently later on in Oregon at the ranch. More coming up.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey. Who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have at work today. This is you ain't gonna make. Wait on account now. Wait a minute. Whoa! Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me? Because you scared me. What am I being detained for? You're being served. What is this? You're being served. What is this?
Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your amp will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you amp Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
Yep, it's Free Talk Live. Phones here are open for you at 603-283-6160. 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight,
Etienne de la Boetie. Scored.
And also Matt. You can bring up anything you want. That's the point of the program. And you can join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. We've got archives that go way back, all the way back to like 2006. So, you know, if you feel like listening to 15 years worth of Free Talk Live, you can do that at freetalklive.com. You can also search the archives. So if there's like a topic or something that you're looking for, you can find those pretty easily. freetalklive.com. We are going to go to your phone calls, your thoughts to a caller that for a time was banned because he wouldn't stop calling incessantly after hours when he was asked nicely to stop. But since then, we've changed our phone system over, and that means that he was unbanned, and he's back. So with us now is James in Arizona. James, you're on Free Talk Live.
Etienne,
Minister Bernard lies with the ease with which he breathes. So you can take that for what it's worth.
You're saying you weren't banned?
I should like to. No, I was banned, but not for the reason you just said, ETN. Not that you care about the truth, but if you have the intellectual integrity and intelligence to admit to me, speaking of a fair representation of history and the problems in Afghanistan, speaking of obedience and power misuse, the biggest scam in Middle East history is the Quran. Wouldn't you agree, ETN? And that's the source of all its problems.
No, I don't really have any.
Just as if ETN.
Were you going to let him answer the question?
Yeah. Did I get to answer?
One more point, ETN. Just as if you were to open up an LRN studio or a Shia Free Church in downtown Kabul, Afghanistan, you might not last. You'd find out you have one life to live, and it would have been yesterday by the time the broadcast was over. Wouldn't you agree, ETN?
Yes, and if I opened one up on Mars, I would have no oxygen.
So, do you want to answer his first question? Your thoughts on the Quran?
It just seemed like the babbling of an insane person. So I don't feel like we really need to,
I'll say this,
him.
As somebody who actually had a Muslim on our show regularly, Will Coley, who you might have met over the years at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I'm not sure if you ever ran into Will. Great guy, great activist. He is an imam. He has read the Quran. He knows it, front to back. And
he really does.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. We had him on multiple times before he became a co-host here and actually moved to New Hampshire, where the Shia Free Church helped him open up a mosque here in town. Unfortunately, he had to leave town because his dad was dying. His dad has since died. His mom is now likely going to pass away as well. So maybe we're going to see him back here someday. But if he were here on the show tonight, I think he would say that the Quran is a book of peace, and that Islam is a religion of peace. And I think a lot of people would agree with him. But obviously, there are some people who are extremists within a lot of religions out there, including Islam, including Christianity. There are people who are extremists. There's plenty of extremist Christians in the U.S. military who go around killing people, and Jesus would never, have advocated for anything like that. So all that said, thanks for the call, James. The number is 603-283-6160 if you want to join us here. Ammon Bundy is running for governor in the state of Idaho. You brought up Idaho tonight here, and I've had this story in show prep since, actually, I think it came out during the Porcupine Freedom Festival or just beforehand, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it on the air. But, of course, in the mainstream media, this article, the Associated Press, they're describing him as anti-government activist Ammon Bundy. That's the first few words in this article. Says he came out with his first videos announcing his campaign to become governor of Idaho. Quote, "I'm running for governor because I'm sick and tired of all this political garbage just like you are," he said in his 3-minute video on the campaign website. "I'm tired of our freedoms being taken from us, and I'm tired of the corruption that is rampant in our state government." So votebundy.com is the site. To the Associated Press's credit, they did link to his site, so at the very least they did that. You think he can win?
Yeah. So, like I said, the Idaho is known as the Great Redoubt, and people that have been FU to the organized crime government have been moving to Idaho for decades. It's not just like a new thing. And that's being accelerated by the COVID. And so it's the people that do not believe what the government and the media are telling them about the COVID or about anything, and are wanting to be around other people that are like, we already know the government's corrupt and we don't believe what's going on with the COVID. And so if there was one, that he's a hero out there. And
For sure.
Yeah, I think he absolutely positively could win.
Angry populist man of the people.
Yeah. He was really rounding people up during COVID and doing public protests and mask burnings and things like that. Yeah. So he's definitely got a lot of attention. There's a lot of people out there that appreciate what he has to say. And of course, he made a name for himself years ago. There was, of course, the Bundy Ranch situation in, 2013 or something like that, out in Nevada, which was his father, Cliven Bundy, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
And not to get too deep into that situation, but the short version is there was a disagreement with the Bureau of Land Management, a federal agency, over grazing rights. And the federal government came out there and tried to arrest these people, charge them with stuff. And a bunch of folks came out and backed them up. People
from all over the country.
All over the country.
And they came armed.
They
came armed, and they were set up as in sniper positions on a bridge. There was a famous, photograph of a guy literally set up on a sniper about to take, ready to take out
feds,
BLM feds that were encroaching on his rights.
Interestingly, of all the arrests that they made later, they didn't actually go in during the standoff and arrest anyone. They figured out who was there, and then months later or whatever, they went and they arrested these people when they were separated. Right? They went to their hometowns and snatched them up, and some of them took guilty pleas. But of the ones that went to trial, I believe every single one of them were let off by the jury. Not guilty was the result, and that was an amazing evidence of jury nullification. If you ever needed some, that when presented with outrageous actions on the part of the government, at least in some cases, some juries will do the right thing, which was nice to see.
It's even greater if you can stand outside the courthouse and just hand out jury nullification pamphlets to anybody who's walking by the courthouse on,
For sure. Let's go to your calls here and your thoughts. We're going unscreened since we're toward the end of the show. You're on Free Talk Live. Hello.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, who's this?
Homer in Austin. My name is Homer. I'm in Austin.
Hey, Homer, you're on the air.
Yeah, I've been enjoying what you all are talking about. A couple of things. Just wanted to see if you all were maybe a little more read up on it than I was. Two things. Okay, so it may seem pop newsy, I guess, but the Port-au-Prince president, that is such a troubled part of the world. So on that, is it possible that he was taken out because he was anti-vax? Some connections on that, and my understanding too is there are in the past.
We lost him. I think he just dropped right out of that signal. Oh, you're back. Sorry, you were saying?
Okay, yeah, Oregon. Out of that country, other countries, young children or.
I think we're losing you there, and it's probably a bad cell phone signal. But regarding, he's talking about the assassination allegedly of the president of Haiti, which just happened.
I did not know that the president of Haiti was assassinated.
I think it was the president, right? Yeah. This was like yesterday or the day before.
Oh, 2 days ago, I think.
Just happened.
Oh, clearly I'm not a suspect. That's great.
But interestingly, as he pointed out there, apparently this guy might have been anti-mask, of which I was not aware. But what do you guys think? I mean, is that a possible reason that they took him out?
Why not? I mean, a world leader is not going to play ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's a possibility. There's a gazillion reasons why somebody might want to take out
a president of a country, especially Haiti.
Yeah.
Not that any government is not corrupt. Obviously, they're all corrupt and terrible, but Haiti's certainly known for being corrupt and
it was definitely
pros.
It was mercenaries and pros.
Was it?
Yeah. High speed operators got them.
We continue. Thanks for the call there, calling from Austin. Definitely appreciate it. Let's go to another caller. You're on Free Talk Live. Hello, unscreened. Caller, going once. Caller, you're on, going twice. All right, thank you for the call, and I'm not taking that next one because it's James. I can see his phone number. We've got caller ID now, thanks to our new voice over IP phone system here. Yeah. That's the thing that got him banned the first time, even though he said that it wasn't. It's because he just kept on calling back. I said, dude, you call back again. We're just going to ban you from the phones. And he kept calling back. Like, all right.
Some people don't get it.
Yep. I mean, I'll let him on, obviously. I don't mind putting him on the air. Just you only get one call per night. Now, if the call doesn't go the way you wanted it to, well, sorry, go get your own radio show.
I think James knows that.
Or call the next night. I mean, he's not that drunk. He should be able to figure that out. Etienne, thanks for stopping by here tonight.
Absolutely.
Always good to see you. Keep up the great work out there with your book, which, again, you can go grab it over at government-scam.com. It's Government, the biggest scam in history exposed. Great little book. Easy to get through, easy to read, lots of cool pictures. Great for a conversation starter with whoever you want to talk to. We'll see you tomorrow night online. In the meantime, freetalklive.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable government